Chapter 643. Squatting at the top of the air fortress, Hyojin touched the edge of the uneven hole and thought. This kind of instantaneous destructive power should be dust release, but why is it so different from Inoki's dust release? The accident just now happened in an instant. Even a ninja of Kuroto's strength was caught off guard, and there was no time to stop it, and everything has already happened. The power was also amazing. Whether it was the training ground where Hyojin was at that time, or the upper areas of the training ground, Hyojin had already modified and reinforced them. But these areas that had been modified and reinforced were instantly penetrated like tofu when the accident happened. Not only that, even the defensive enchantment protecting the air fortress was the same as these areas. It didn't even last for a second before it was instantly broken. Of course, this was because of the attack from the inside, but even if the defensive enchantment on the inside side of the defensive enchantment was relatively weak, it could be instantly broken, which showed how terrifying the power of the accident just now was. Ordinary blood limit boundaries couldn't do this at all. Only blood limit boundaries that were above the blood limit boundary, through the fusion of 3 attributes of chakra, could have such instantaneous, explosive power. Is it because of the ratio? After thinking about it, Kuroto felt that the accident just now, as well as the damage caused by the accident, was not consistent with the normal dust release, most likely caused by the wrong fusion ratio of earth, fire, and wind chakra. The importance of the chakra fusion ratio, Hyojin, who had practiced many blood limit boundaries, actually knew. But because Kekii Genkai only needs to fuse 2 attributes of chakra, the fusion ratio could be easily found. So Kuroto didn't pay much attention to it before. But because Kekii Genkai only needs to fuse 2 attributes of chakra, the fusion ratio could be easily found. So Kuroto didn't pay much attention to it before. But dust release was different because dust release needed to fuse 3 attributes of chakra. Although it seemed like there was only one more type of chakra that needed to be fused than the bloodline limit boundary, it was precisely because of this additional type of chakra that needed to be fused that the ratio of combinations increased by a lot. And because Kekii elimination was close to the limit of a ninja's ability to control chakra, it was more difficult to control than Kekii limit. Every mistake could lead to an unexpected accident like the one just now. So, trying to figure out the most stable fusion ratio was far more troublesome and dangerous than figuring out the fusion ratio of Kekii limit. Back then, the developer of Dust Escape was able to find the most suitable fusion ratio. Luck probably played a big part in this. Regardless of whether the original developer of Dust Release was lucky enough to find the best fusion ratio of Dust Release in 1 or 2 attempts, or he was lucky enough to survive after many accidents, this shows that he is a lucky person, and to develop a Kekii Genkai elimination that is close to the limit of a ninja, luck is indeed a must. At this time, the benefits of inheritance were reflected. If there was Inoki's guidance, Hyojin could take a lot less detours and take a lot less risks. But Hyojin didn't have any ideas about Inoki, because practicing dust release was to develop the second earth release clone, not to master dust release itself. Kuroto's goal is to obtain an earth release clone that is qualified in terms of strength and soul compatibility. And the process of exploring the optimal fusion ratio of the Dust Escape was in fact the most efficient way to develop the Earth Escape clone number 2. It was just like practicing the 8 inner hidden gates. It was the best way for him to improve his control over his Een escape body. After some simple repairs to the Sky Fortress, Hyojin sat on a clay bird and arrived at a deserted island nearby. From a certain point of view, the previous accident proved that Hyojin had managed to fuse the 3 attributes of earth, fire, and wind chakra. Therefore, he decided to strike while the iron was hot. While the state of fusing the 3 attributes of chakra had not completely disappeared, he wanted to make his body remember this state. Landing on an open beach, Hyojin threw the ninja bag that he carried with him onto the clay bird's back and signaled it to fly high up in the sky. With the previous accident, he didn't dare to bring dangerous items like the explosive clay with him when he was practicing the dust escape technique. If an accident were to happen again and accidentally detonate them, then he would really not even have a corpse left. Phew! After everything was ready, Hyojin let out a breath and began to fuse the 3 attributes of earth, fire, and wind chakra again. Unlike the last time, the fusion of the 3 attributes of chakra was much smoother this time. It didn't take much effort, and the 3 attributes of chakra began to fuse in his body. This time, Hyojin was careful. He adjusted the ratio of the main attribute, earth, to the maximum and only infused a small amount of fire and wind chakra. By doing this, the fused dust release chakra might be weak, but it was definitely the most stable and safe. After all, the earth attribute was the most stable chakra attribute. After a while, Hyojin's eyes focused. He felt that his body had fused enough dust release chakra. At this time, he slowly opened the palm of his right hand and released the dust release chakra that was fused in his body. In an instant, a peanut-sized fluorescent ball appeared in his palm. Hyojin looked happy and immediately shot the fluorescent ball in his hand to a shell buried in the beach not far away. Puff! The fluorescent ball hit the shell and made a soft sound of a bubble bursting. Kuroto looked at the shell and saw that after being hit by the fluorescent ball, the shell was unscathed. There was not even a trace of damage on the surface, as if it was really hit by a soft bubble just now. Hyojin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But if the 3 generations Tsuchika Jinoki was here and saw this scene, he would be surprised because Hyojin had touched the prototype of dust release. J. At this time, a shiny ninja crow flew to the deserted island and landed on Hyojin's shoulder. Did you find a trace of Danzo? Hyojin was happy. Although he knew that Danzo would deliberately leak its trace in the near future to lead him to attack, the sooner he locked the trace of Danzo, the sooner he could get the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo SI sockets. But before Hyojin could take off the communication scroll on the legs of the ninja crow, another ninja crow flew over and hovered over his head. Hyojin quickly took off the communication scroll on the legs of the 2 ninja crows, looked at it, and smiled. Interesting. Chapter 644. The 2 crows flew from the direction of Konoha and the mist respectively, but the message they conveyed was the same. That is, they found Shimura Danzo's tracks. But to Hyojin's surprise, the information from the 2 channels was not the same. From a mist village, 4 generations Mizukage Goji Yagura reported that they found traces of Danzo near a cave in the country of Long. As for Mai, Jishui got the information from the Black Ops that Danzo was hiding in a cave on the coast of the country of Hot Water. The country of Long and the country of Hot Water were separated by the country of Iron and the country of Tion. The distance between the 2 countries was thousands of miles. It was impossible for Danzo to appear in these 2 places at the same time in such a short time. Therefore, one of the 2 places must be fake, a smoke bomb deliberately released by Danzo. They didn't forget to use a smoke bomb when setting a trap. Are they afraid of being besieged? Hyojin saw through Danzo's plan at a glance. Danzo revealed 2 fake hiding places of Shinichi at the same time to confuse Amatsukami. He wanted to divide the powerful Amatsukami into 2 groups to share the pressure and avoid being besieged by all members of Amatsukami. From Danzo's point of view, with his current strength, as long as Amatsukami didn't gather together, even if he couldn't defeat them, he could still escape. Which hideout is the real one? Hyojin pondered for a moment, but he couldn't figure it out. With limited information, he couldn't determine which of the 2 hiding places Danzo deliberately revealed was real and which was fake. But the uninhabited island he was on happened to be on the sea east of the country of Hot Water. It was very close to the hiding place of Danzo in the country of Hot Water, according to Mai's Black Ops. If he rode on the clay bird, he could reach it in a few hours. Calling down the clay bird hovering in the air, Kuroto tied the 4 shinobi pouches to his waist, and then took out a black gold-edged cloak of Amatsukami from one of the shinobi pouches and put it on. Then he put on a new mask, a new one with a mountain pattern painted on it. Let's go. After jumping on the clay bird, Hyojin said lightly. Since he already knew the exact hiding place of Danzo, and it happened to be so close, he naturally had to go and find out. In a dark and damp cave, Danzo was sitting cross-legged in the cave. The water, dripping from his stalactites on the ceiling, splashed on his body, but he didn't seem to notice it. At this time, his face was full of uncontrollable desire and greed. His eyes were a little out of focus after activating the eternal Manjiku Sharingan, as if he had fallen into some kind of illusion. He muttered to himself, "When this old man gets the Rinnegan, I will be the strongest in the shinobi world. What Amatsukami, what Akatsuki, all of them will be crushed by this old man. The shinobi world belongs to this old man. It belongs to my sensei. I will let you see with your own eyes how I unify the shinobi world and how I will make my great. I want you to understand that you were wrong in the past. You should have passed the position of Naruto to me. A weak guy like Hizen doesn't deserve to be Naruto. He will only lead the village into a bottomless abyss." Danzo seemed to be completely immersed in his own world. His emotions were getting more and more agitated. His murmur slowly turned into a hysterical roar. At the same time, a group of figures wearing the Akatsuki red cloud uniform came to a cave. There were a total of 7 people in this group, all wearing the Akatsuki red cloud uniform. Although 6 of them were different in stature and appearance, they all had the same orange hair and a conspicuous black stick inlaid on their body. Without a doubt, they were the 6 paths of pain controlled by the leader of Akatsuki Nagato. Along with the 6 paths of pain was Konan, who wore a paper flower on her head and was known as the Angel. At this time, Tendo glanced at the cave not far away and asked Konan, "Is it here?" Konan gently nodded. According to the intelligence, this is one of the 2 hiding places of Danzo. Danzo. Tendo muttered the name Danzo, and a trace of hatred gradually appeared on his indifferent face. Just like Hanzo, Danzo is also the culprit behind Yahiko's death, but Danzo is too despicable. Even when the Akatsuki attacked my several times, he didn't show up, so Nagato couldn't find a chance to take revenge. Konan also looked at the entrance of the cave. Her beautiful face was covered with a layer of frost, and said, "In fact, you can leave it to me. You don't need to waste chakra on this kind of person." Tendo shook his head. "I have to do it myself. I want him to apologize to Yahiko." The reason why Nagato sent the 6 paths of pain, in addition to using Tendo's hand to personally deal with Danzo and avenge Yahiko, is also to be safe. After all, the abilities of the Manjiku Sharingan are very strange, and since Danzo has a pair of Manjiku Sharingan that can activate Susanoo, then he can't be careless, so he didn't feel at ease leaving Konan to deal with it. Konan turned her head and looked at Tendo. Looking at Yahiko's face, she was in a trance for a while. Tiandao asked again, "What about his other hiding place?" Konan recovered and said, "Don't worry, he has already gone there." Outside another cave, a twisting vortex appeared out of thin air, and then a figure wearing a vortex mask walked out of the vortex. There is no doubt that this person is Uchiha Obsidian. At this time, the ground next to Obsidian squirmed, and then Zetsu leaned out of it and complained, "Danzo is really annoying. He made me travel so far." Obsidian crossed his arms and gestured towards the cave not far away. "Is it here?" Zetsu nodded. "Well, this is one of the 2 hiding places where Danzo leaked his whereabouts. As for the other hiding place, Nagato has already sent the 6 paths of pain there, so you don't have to worry about it." Obsidian said, "I'm really curious. How did Danzo get his hands on a pair of Manjiku Sharingan? Did he dig out the eyes of Homusubi of Amatsukami?" Obsidian had witnessed Hiriko's Kekiai Genkai fusion ritual, and he doesn't think that such a ritual can create a pair of precious Manjiku Sharingan that can activate Susanoo. Zetsu shrugged. "Who knows, but if he really dug out the Manjiku Sharingan of Homusubi of Amatsukami, I'm afraid he would have already been killed by Amatsukami, right? Those guys are not to be trifled with." TSK. Thinking of the fact that he was killed once by the female Homusubi of Amatsukami, sealed once by the male Homusubi of Amatsukami with the Totsuken sword, and beheaded once by the wind chime, Obsidian's face turned black, and he spat lightly. At this time, a black shadow flew in the air. Obsidian glanced at it and said, "Everyone is here. Let's go." Chapter 645. Almost at the same time, the two groups of Akatsuki members who were thousands of miles apart from each other entered the cave in front of them. The Akatsuki officially participated in this hunt against Danzo. Drip, drip. In the dark and damp cave, the sound of water dripping was intermittent. Naruto belongs to this old man. The village belongs to this old man. The shinobi world belongs to this old man. Everything belongs to this old man. Danzo, who was sitting on the ground, was still muttering to himself. His scarlet eyes flashed with a strange brilliance from time to time, and his whole body seemed to have an inexplicable evil aura. At this moment, a series of footsteps could be heard from afar, faintly approaching. "Are they here?" The corner of Danzo's mouth twitched, revealing a strange smile. After a while, a group of people appeared in Danzo's field of vision. Danzo looked at the opposite side and smiled with an infatuated expression. Is this the Rinnegan? What an intoxicating treasure. There is no doubt that the one who appeared in front of Danzo at this moment is Six Paths of Pain, whose eye sockets are full of Rinnegan runes. In this lottery, Six Paths of Pain is obviously lucky to meet the main character. Tendo stared at Danzo with an indifferent expression. His gaze paused on the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan on Danzo's body for a moment, and immediately said in an indifferent tone, "It really is the Manjikyu Sharingan." Nagato didn't seem to be too surprised that Danzo really has a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan as rumored, nor did he care too much about it. For him, it's just a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. At this time, Danzo stood up from the ground. "I didn't expect that you would be the first to find this place. Well, today let this old man experience the power of the Rinnegan." Facing these Six Paths of Pain that had once destroyed Danzo showed no signs of fear. In fact, his scarlet eyes were filled with eagerness. "Could it be that you're waiting for someone?" After a pause, Heavens will continued, "It doesn't matter. In any case, today is the day you die." "Time to die." Laughing coldly, Danzo said, "A bunch of mere puppets dares to determine this old man's fate? You don't understand how powerful this old man is now. Whether it is your Akatsuki or Amatsukami, you will all be destroyed by this old man. This shinobi world belongs to this old man." Heavens will slowly raised his right hand and spat out two words, "Ant," in another cave. Obsidian and Ju walked into the cave side by side and saw Danzo sitting cross-legged in the middle of the cave. Ju chuckled and said, "Looks like we made the right choice." At this time, Danzo snorted and said, "I didn't expect that your Akatsuki would dare to cause trouble for this old man. This old man will remember this debt." Bang! As soon as Danzo's voice fell, his whole body turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared from the cave. Shadow Clone. Ju was startled for a moment and immediately felt annoyed. "I didn't expect this hiding place to be fake." Obsidian's eyes narrowed as he analyzed. Since the hiding place in the land of hot water is fake, then Danzo should be in the land of long. Looking at his appearance just now, it seems that he intentionally leaked his whereabouts. Although I don't know what he wants, I'm afraid that Nagato will have some trouble. Ju was puzzled. Even if Nagato doesn't use his true body, he should be able to easily deal with a trash like Danzo. Obsidian curled his lips. Let's hope so. There is too much information about Danzo in the shinobi world, true and false. So far no one knows what happened to Danzo and what state Danzo is in right now. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, there was a violent explosion outside the cave. Obsidian and Ju glanced at each other, then quickly rushed out of the cave and found that Sasori, who was standing on top of the summoned beast, was confronting the Mai Umbu, led by Kakashi. The reason why Jishuei was able to pass the information to Hyojin was because Konohagakure found this hiding place of Danzo, so Kakashi and other Umbu naturally rushed here to hunt down Danzo. As a result, the Mai Umbu and the Akatsuki organization encountered each other in this fake hiding place of Danzo. In the air, Sasori, who was standing on top of the summoned beast left by Hiriko, asked Obsidian and Ju, as if there was no one else present, "How was it? Did you get rid of that trash, Danzo?" Ju shrugged and said, "That guy is not here." "Bah, I came here for nothing." After complaining casually, Sasori turned his gaze to the Mai Umbu opposite him and said with a smile, "But it's not like we didn't gain anything. At least we can collect some puppet materials." Obviously, in the eyes of Sasori, the Mai Umbu in front of him are just a pile of puppet materials for him to choose from. On the side of the Mai Umbu, Kurenai nervously approached Kakashi's side and whispered, "Kakashi, what should we do now?" Originally, they only wanted to hunt down the seriously injured Danzo, but they didn't expect to encounter the Akatsuki organization in this damned place. Moreover, 3 members of the Akatsuki organization at the same time. So including Kurenai, all the members of the Mai Umbu present were extremely nervous. Everyone is very clear that no one in the Akatsuki organization is easy to deal with. If it's just one person, then they can barely fight, but now that they encountered 3 people at the same time, there is basically no chance of winning. But Kakashi didn't seem to hear Kurenai's question. His eyes were fixed on Obsidian, who was wearing the Vortex mask opposite him. Feeling Kakashi's fiery gaze, Obsidian secretly sighed in his heart. Has he already noticed it? Kakashi is still as sharp as ever. This is the puppet technique I just improved. Everyone in the Mai Umbu, please advise me. Sasori said, and took out a scroll from the ninja bag on his waist, and lightly shook it. Bang! With a burst of white smoke, a puppet with the unique bun of the Kagaya clan on its head and 2 red dots between its eyebrows appeared in front of everyone. But unlike before, this puppet's body is not connected to any chakra lines, but just like the 6 paths of pain, there is a conspicuous black stick inlaid in the key position. In the distant sky, on the clay bird, Hyojin, who had activated the Byakugan, looked into the distance. Just like all the previous clones, the Earth clone number 2 that Hyojin is controlling at the moment also has a pair of incomplete Byakugan, and when Hyojin's Ryatsu was injected into this clone, the incomplete Byakugan was restored to a healthy Byakugan, and the purity of the Byakugan is not inferior to that of the Hyuga clan's Hyuga clan. Because of this, Hyojin, who is controlling the Earth clone number 2, doesn't need any observation equipment to observe the situation in the distance from a high altitude. Chapter 646. After flying a little closer, Hyojin's pupils suddenly shrank, and he wondered, Akatsuki? Because of the distance, he still couldn't see some details of the battlefield at the moment, but he still noticed the conspicuous red cloud suit of the Akatsuki. After discovering the traces of the Akatsuki, he immediately ordered the clay bird to slow down, and then he fully activated the Byakugan in his eye socket to observe. On the battlefield, clang, clang, clang. The sound of sharp weapons clashing echoed on the battlefield, and it was often followed by mournful wails. At this time, Sasori's Kagaya clan puppet was like a dancer, flashing and moving among the Umbu members of Mai, and the sharp bone blades protruding from its palms were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, mercilessly harvesting lives one after another. The improvement of the puppet technique allowed Sasori to no longer control the puppet through the complicated chakra lines like before. This not only allowed him to control the puppet from a distance, but also made the puppet far more flexible than before, like a living ninja. Therefore, in just a moment of confrontation, several Umbu members of Mai's side died, tragically in the hands of Sasori's puppet. On the other side, Kakashi was entangled with Obsidian, and he had no extra energy to help his Umbu members resist Sasori's puppet. Swish, another flash, in the whistling sound of the wind, Sasori's puppet suddenly attacked Red's back, and the bone blade in its palm slashed down, cutting Red's body into 2. Bang! However, the expected blood did not appear. Instead, it was replaced by white smoke after the shadow clone was broken. At that moment, Red's real body silently appeared behind the humanoid puppet. The kunai in her hand, which was forged from fine steel, stabbed into the humanoid puppet's back. Clang! The periosteum on the back of the puppet easily blocked the sharp kunai in Red's hand, making a sharp sound that could only be heard when metals collided. Red was startled. This? The puppet turned around and kicked Red, who was sneakily attacking from behind, away. Cough, cough. Red, who was sent flying, immediately got up. She coughed twice with a gloomy face, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. In the sky, standing quietly on the back of the fusion spirit beast, Sasori looked at the dead and injured my Umbu members below and said with a chuckle, "Everyone in my modified human puppet didn't disappoint you, right? Oh, I forgot to introduce this human puppet was the patriarch of the Kagaya clan when he was alive, a powerful ninja with the bone vein." Red snorted. "This level of bone vein is nothing. Don't be too proud." In her eyes, only Wind Chime's bone blade that could easily cut through the Uchiha clan Susanoo was a truly powerful corpse bone vein. Although this so-called patriarch of the Kagaya clan was powerful, compared to Wind Chime, he was nothing. Scorpion's face turned cold. "Do you have a problem with my work?" Red said, "I'm just telling the truth. If your puppets really encountered Amatsukami, they would just be some inferior toys." Sasori narrowed his eyes, and his murderous intent exploded. Just when Sasori's attention was focused on Red, a sword light suddenly flashed from behind him, and without any hesitation, it slashed his body. Crack! The sword light fell, and Sasori's body was cut in half, and the puppet parts scattered on the ground. This isn't his real body? Gale, who deactivated the penetrating escape, revealed his figure on the back of the fusion spirit beast, and looked at the scattered puppet parts in front of him with a serious expression. Without a doubt, Red talked to Sasori on purpose to attract his attention and create an opportunity for Gale's sneak attack. Although she was facing a strong enemy, her mind was clear, and she understood that the battle would only end when the puppet master was defeated, and it was meaningless to fight with the puppet master's puppet. Clap, clap. At that moment, Sasori walked out from behind a big tree, and while clapping, he said with a relaxed smile, "Tiskadiske, not a bad strategy. Mai's Dark Division is quite capable, much stronger than those trash from the Sand Crypsis, but you guys are underestimating me." *T. As soon as he saw Sasori appear below, Gale, who was fused with the fusion spirit beast, instinctively felt that something was wrong. Therefore, he did not dare to hesitate, and immediately activated the penetrating escape, trying to hide himself again. Suddenly, an ice blade silently pierced through Gale's abdomen. Gale, whose body was gradually disappearing, was stunned on the spot. The penetrating escape that he was about to activate was also interrupted by this sudden sneak attack. Immediately after that, Gale turned his head to look behind him in disbelief, and all he saw was a puppet with a cold gaze, emitting a biting cold aura standing behind him, staring at him coldly. This scene was almost exactly the same as when he ambushed Sasori. Gale's eyes were filled with astonishment. "When did you get close to me?" Of course, the puppet would not answer Gale's question. It suddenly pulled out the ice blade that pierced through Gale's abdomen, and blood splattered everywhere. Puk. As the ice blade that pierced through his abdomen was pulled out, Gale spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the back of the fusion spirit beast. In the sky far away, as he flew closer, Hyojin could already observe the battle in detail through the whites of his eyes. When he saw the two sides fighting, his face sank. The Dark Division of the village is fighting with the Akatsuki, which means this hiding place is most likely fake. I'm afraid that Danzo is not in the country of hot water, but the country of long. After that, Hyojin looked at the battlefield again. Although the Dark Division on my side had the advantage in numbers, they were firmly suppressed by the two members of the Akatsuki. Kakashi's Flying Thunder God technique was indeed getting smoother and smoother, but against Obsidian's holy aura, he could only barely block it. The others were no match for Sasori at all, and they were being one-sidedly beaten up by him. Seeing that the casualties on my side were getting more and more serious, especially Red, Gale, and Chien, who were his subordinates in the Dark Division, were all injured and in a precarious situation, Hyojin could only sigh helplessly. What a bunch of idiots. Didn't I tell you long ago to run if you can't win? On the battlefield, on the back of the fusion spirit beast, the human puppet that was originally from the Snow Clan and could use Ice Escape condensed a sharp ice spear in its hand, and it aimed at Gale's head, who was kneeling on the ground. At the same time, the human puppet that was made by the Kagaya clan's leader on the ground also suppressed Red and Xian, and the bone blade extended from its palm was about to pierce them. At this critical moment, the two human puppets in the air and on the ground stopped what they were doing at the same time. Sasori, who was controlling them, looked at a big bird in the sky and murmured, wearing a mask, black robe with golden edges, a member of Akatsuki. Chapter 647. In today's shinobi world, Amatsukami is undoubtedly the organization that is most capable of colluding with Akatsuki. Therefore, when Sasori discovered the target in the sky that he suspected to be a member of Amatsukami, he no longer had any interest in the Umbu members of my clan around him. Soon after, he leaped up and landed on the back of the fused spiritual beast. As he kicked the injured Gale off the fused spiritual beast, he put the Ice Escape and the corpse bone vein into the scroll. Throughout the process, his eyes never left the big white bird in the sky. At this time, Zetsu, who has not participated in the battle, poked out half of his body from a big tree and asked Sasori, "What do you want to do?" Sasori smirked and said, "I'm going to kill him." Zetsu hesitated for a moment and said, "The other party is Amatsukami. Although he seems to be a new member, wouldn't it be too difficult for you to go alone?" "Don't worry, I can handle it. Hee, I have long wanted a puppet of Amatsukami." After saying that, Sasori didn't wait for Zetsu to persuade him again and immediately urged the fusion-summoned beast under his feet to fly into the sky, fiercely pouncing towards the big white bird hovering in the sky. The fusion-summoned beast under Sasori's feet is a masterpiece left by Hiriko. Not only can it release explosive feathers to carry out high-altitude bombardment, but it also has extremely high maneuverability. Its flying speed surpasses the vast majority of summoned beasts that have the ability to fly. It is a true bird of prey, a true flying monster. Seeing Sasori pouncing towards him, Hyojin immediately ordered the clay bird to turn around and run. "Want to run?" Sasori snorted and said, "Humph, do you think you can run away?" Whoosh! In an instant, amidst the whistling gales, the clay-flying bird and the fused spiritual beast engaged in an intense chase high up in the sky. Both of them flew extremely fast, and in just a few breaths of time, they were far away from the battlefield. On top of the clay bird, Hyojin squinted his eyes and looked back. Seeing that the distance between him and the fusion spirit beast was getting closer and closer, he couldn't help but exclaim, "I didn't expect that this monster that Hiriko transformed with the Chimera technique could actually fly so fast." Hyojin, who has a variety of flying abilities, is very clear about the speed of his clay bird, so he was slightly surprised that Hiriko's fusion-summoned beast was able to catch up with his clay bird. After chasing for a while, Hyojin, who was on the clay bird, could clearly see the playful expression on Sasori's face behind him. "Shio shio." Just then, a few sharp whistles came from behind. Before Hyojin could turn around, 6 or 7 colorful feathers stabbed into the tail of his clay bird. Hiss! Immediately after, the feathers emitted a sound similar to detonation talismans. TSK. Kuroto spat lightly and immediately jumped down from the clay bird. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as Hyojin jumped off the clay bird, the feathers stabbed into the clay bird's tail exploded, and the explosion of the feathers caused the clay bird itself to explode. As a result, the whole clay bird completely exploded in the air like a large firework. Hyojin, who fell from the sky, fell to the ground in a sorry state. Before he could catch his breath, a large shadow appeared above his head. He quickly looked up and saw that the fusion spirit beast that was chasing him was hovering above his head. At this time, Sasori leisurely jumped down from the fusion spirit beast, looked at Hyojin from head to toe, and asked, "Who are you?" Hyojin patted the dust off his body and casually said, "Amatsukami's Xidagarba." "Xidagarba, huh? You really are a new member." After a pause, Sasori smiled and said, "Unfortunately, I'm afraid you will be the first member of Amatsukami to die in battle. But don't worry, you will soon become a member of my collection." Hyojin curled his lips. Hey, don't look down on me. Maybe you will die in my hands. Sasori covered his face with one hand and laughed. Although you are wearing a cloak and a mask, do you think I don't know who you are? Hyojin was startled, and a trace of doubt flashed on his face under the mountain mask. Sasori's mouth cracked, and he said, "Don't tell me you have forgotten about the previous debt, Dedale. I thought you were just a complete lunatic, but it turns out that you have joined Amatsuka. Fine, then I will settle the old and new debts with you." Duh, Dedale? Hyojin really didn't think that Sasori would mistake him for Dedale, and was speechless for a while. At this time, Sasori put his hand into the ninja bag on his waist and solemnly took out a scroll. He slowly shook it and said, "This is a masterpiece that I recently completed, an art of art. Dedale, you should feel honored. If you were not a member of Amatsuka, you wouldn't be qualified to see my work." Looking at the scroll that Sasori shook open and saw the words Hiriko written on it, Hyojin was taken aback. Hiriko is dead, and he was turned into a human puppet? In the previous battle, although he cut off Hiriko's head, but Hiriko's body has the demon sprout, and he also mastered Shino's dark medical ninjutsu, so he has always felt regret for not being able to completely kill Hiriko. Now that he saw Sasori take out the scroll with the words Hiriko written on it, he knows that Hiriko is dead. Holding the scroll, Sasori smiled and said, "Don't worry, it will be over soon." Coming back to his senses, Hyojin nodded in agreement. Yes, it will be over soon. As soon as his voice fell, Hyojin's body rapidly expanded. "You?" The smile on Sasori's face instantly froze. Boom! A huge explosion instantly engulfed everything. On the battlefield, Hyojin, dressed in Amatsuka's uniform, descended from the clay bird in the air. While vigilantly watching Kakashi and Obsidian who were fighting not far away, he walked towards the Umbu of Mai who were healing. Seeing the unfamiliar member of Amatsuka coming over, although the Umbu of Mai didn't show too much hostility, they were still on guard. Only Red went up and asked, "You were the one in the sky just now. Didn't you leave?" That was just a clay clone to lure the enemy away. After answering indifferently, Hyojin came in front of Gale and asked, "How is his injury?" Shien, who was squatting beside Gale, shook her head bitterly. The team's medical ninja was killed by Sasori's human puppet in the battle just now. So at this moment, Shien could only barely bandage Gale's wound. But Gale's abdomen was completely pierced. Ordinary bandages wouldn't last long. If not treated in time, Gale would inevitably die from excessive blood loss. Hyojin raised his hand and called down the clay bird hovering in the air, then immediately said to Red, Shien, and the others, "Move the seriously injured up. It will carry them back to Mai." Chapter 648. When the twisting whirlpool appeared behind Hyojin, Red and Shien had a strange expression on their faces. Nervousness and horror instantly spread on their faces. "Be careful." At the same time, Kakashi's shout came from afar. Seeing the change in Red and Shien's expression, Hyojin realized that something was wrong. He didn't even turn around to see what was going on. Instead, he directly used the body flicker technique to leave. Pa! But at this moment, an arm was placed on Hyojin's shoulder. Almost instantly, a huge feeling of stripping filled Hyojin's body. It completely disrupted the chakra that he had just refined in his body, and the body flicker technique that he was about to use was also stopped abruptly. Obsidian, who had both eyes, was able to use Kimyui at a speed that was twice as fast as when he only had one eye. Hyojin's reaction was fast, and his response was impeccable. But even so, he still fell into Obsidian's trap. His body was twisted along with the whirlpool. Humph! Obsidian's cold snort passed into Hyojin's ears. Listening to this cold snort full of contempt, Kuroto couldn't do anything. At this moment, he was already paralyzed, not to mention launching ninjutsu. He couldn't even move his arms. Whoosh! Soon, the whirlpool disappeared, and Hyojin, who was swallowed by the whirlpool, also disappeared. The whole process only took 1 or 2 breaths. When Red and Shien in front of Hyojin reacted and waved their kunai, Hygiene had already been swallowed by Obsidian into the Kamui space. Clang! Obsidian raised the chain tied between his wrists and easily blocked the attack of Red and Xian. His figure flashed and retreated to the distance. He said with a proud smile, "The members of Amatsukami are only SOSO." If there were no outsiders present, Obsidian really wanted to laugh a few times to relieve the hatred in his heart. Red said angrily, "Damn it." Xian also gripped her sword tightly as killing intent filled her chest. When they thought about the members of God's organization who had just helped them being ambushed right in front of them, the two of them were filled with shame and anger. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh at this time. 3 kunai were shot at Obsidian at different speeds. With a glance, Obsidian could tell that the 3 kunai that were shot towards him were all specially made kunai with the Flying Thunder God technique inscribed on them. Hence, the corner of his mouth twitched, and without giving Kakashi any chance, he directly entered the voidification state. In an instant, the 3 kunai seemed to have pierced through the air, directly penetrating Obsidian's body, and then nailed to a big tree behind Obsidian. Whoosh with a flash, Kakashi's figure also landed beside the tree. Looking at Obsidian, who remained in the voidification state and seemed to have no desire to attack, Kakashi could not do anything at all. His face was extremely gloomy. The masked man crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, "Although you've grown a lot lately in my eyes, you're still a useless piece of trash. Just like before, you can't stop anything. You can't protect anything." Kakashi said coldly, "I will stop you. I am really looking forward to it." With a smile, Obsidian said, "I will accept this member of God's organization. Goodbye, everyone." For Obsidian, it did not matter whether or not he killed the Mai Umbu in front of him. He only cared about one thing, and that was the information about God's organization. Therefore, after successfully capturing a member of God's organization, he could not wait to go back and interrogate this member of God's organization. He wanted to get all the information about God's organization from this member of God's mouth. "Don't go." Kakashi once again pounced forward. Not only that, but Red and Xian also pounced forward. In the voidification state, Obsidian avoided Kakashi, who was the fastest. Then, he instantly materialized and caught Red and Xian by surprise. One in each hand, he grabbed their necks. Holding both Red and Xian in his hands, Obsidian activated Holy Aura and sucked them into the vortex. At the same time, he looked at Kakashi with disdain and said coldly, "What do you think? Am I right? You're still as useless as before. You can't stop anything, and you can't protect anything." Seeing that Red and Xian were about to be sucked into the Holy Aura space by Obsidian, Kakashi shouted, "No." Obsidian's face was full of disdain. His hands did not stop activating Holy Aura. At this moment of life and death, 2 hands suddenly reached out from the ground beneath Misato's feet and grabbed Kurenai's and Quine's legs, instantly pulling them underground as they were about to be swallowed by the whirlpool. "Who?" Obsidian was shocked and quickly entered the voidification. At this time, not far away, a figure came out from the ground with Red and Xian. Obsidian looked over, and his face immediately darkened. "It's you. Just now." Because he activated Holy Aura through physical contact, Obsidian could confirm that the member of God's organization that was swallowed by his Holy Aura was indeed a real body, and not a shadow clone created by chakra. Therefore, he was very sure that he had successfully captured a member of God's organization. Now that he saw this member of God's organization in front of him again, he knew that he had been tricked by the other party. And the one that was swallowed by Holy Aura was most likely a special clone of God's organization that had a real body. On the other side, Hyojin curled his lips and said to Red and Xian, who were lying on the ground next to him, "So troublesome. Can't you just let him go? Why'd he go up and die?" In the distant forest, the huge explosion almost destroyed the entire forest nearby. The 10-meter-wide crater was deep in the ground. Thick smoke billowed in the surroundings, and the air was filled with the smell of burning. Ashes were also flying in the air. "Damn it!" Sasori crawled out of the dust, gritting his teeth. in the explosion just now. If he hadn't summoned the Hu puppet from the scroll in time and had it use both steel release and swift release to protect him from the center of the explosion, he would have been reduced to ashes in the explosion. This is the second time. Looking at his left arm and leg that were damaged in the explosion, Scorpion's face distorted with anger. He then thought about how he had been blown up twice by Dedale's clay clones and almost lost his life both times. He was about to explode from anger. Dedale, just you wait. Even if I have to turn the entire Hidden Rock Village upside down, I will drag you out. Hidden Rock Village. Achoo. Dedale, who was practicing dust release, suddenly sneezed for no reason. He scratched his head. Hey, what's going on? I didn't catch a cold. At this time, Anoki fiercely knocked Dedale's head. Don't be lazy. Continue practicing. Chapter 649. On the battlefield, Hyojin brushed the dust off his robe and looked a little helpless. In fact, from the beginning, he planned to deliberately give Obsidian a clay clone so that Obsidian would think that he had succeeded and deceive Obsidian. Because his second Earth release clone's Earth attribute chakra is very strong, it has a very high compatibility with Earth release ninjutsu, and it has the effect of increasing the power. In addition, the clay clone is made of explosive clay and has a physical body, so the clay clone used by his second Earth release clone can be completely fake. But he did not expect that the plan could not keep up with the changes. Kakashi and the others' fierce pursuit aroused Obsidian's fierceness, so Hyojin had to show up again to save Obsidian. Looking at Suejin's casual tone and calm demeanor, Hyuga Kuroto felt ashamed and angry, but fortunately, the vortex mask on his face covered his expression and didn't show the embarrassment on his face. You bastard! Soon, Obsidian burst out with killing intent, and the Scarlet Sharingan gradually narrowed. Back off, don't get in the way. Seeing that a battle was inevitable, Hyojin casually ordered Kurenai and Shien next to him. Kurenai, who was on the ground, looked up at Hyojin and said stubbornly, but no buts. Before Kurenai could finish her words, Hyojin interrupted her, and then said, the enemy on the opposite side is not someone you can deal with. Kurenai shouted unwillingly, why is it like this every time? Why can't I help? Shien also bit her lips. Her eyes were full of unwillingness. Hyojin glanced at Kurenai and Shien and said in a calm tone, in the shinobi world, being weak is the original sin. There are not so many why. Didn't your captain teach you such a simple truth? Remember, don't do things beyond your ability. If you feel unhappy, then work hard to become stronger. Obsidian smiled. You are a sensible person. Hyojin shifted his gaze to Obsidian and said, the Scarlet Sand Scorpion that I lured away probably won't be able to return anytime soon. If I were you, I would choose to retreat now. Before completely mastering the dust escape, Hyojin actually didn't want to use this second Earth escape clone to fight with the Obsidian. Obsidian sneered. Do you know why I hate God's organization so much? Hyojin replied matter-of-factly. Isn't it because you almost died in our hands several times? Of course not because of that. Pausing for a moment, Obsidian roared in exasperation. I hate you guys because you guys always have an inexplicable sense of confidence. Fire Demon is like that. Windchime is like that. And even a newcomer like you is like that. It's really annoying. After saying that, Obsidian got into a fighting stance. Not many people in the ninja world were afraid of him because he had too divine aura. In his opinion, the reason why he lost so many times in the hands of the members of God's organization was because they were too despicable and shameless. Hyojin's expression turned serious. He said to Kakashi on the other side, Kakashi, you'll be the main attacker. Okay. Kakashi clenched the special kunai in his hand and responded. He wasn't surprised that this member of God's organization could call out his name. He knew that God's organization not only had a strong intelligence network, but they also cooperated with the village. They had many ways to know his identity. Obsidian looked at Hyojin and Kakashi, who were attacking him from the front and the back. He grinned and said, any attack from you guys is useless against me. While Obsidian was talking, Hyojin gave Kakashi a look, signaling him to attack. Kakashi understood and immediately threw a few kunai with the Flying Thunder God technique at Obsidian. At the same time, his right hand flashed with dazzling blue lightning. Obsidian immediately shut his mouth and entered the void state. Looking at the kunai engraved with the Flying Thunder God incantation passing through his annihilated body, a faint mocking smile appeared on Baitu's face. However, at this moment, the sneer on his face froze. He felt a strong chakra reaction from the other side of the divine aura space. It was a chakra reaction that made him have a bad feeling. Oh no, it's that clone. Realizing that something was wrong, Obsidian immediately exited the void state and cut off the connection with the divine aura space, returning to the solid state. Seeing that Obsidian exited the invincible void state for no reason, Kakashi was slightly surprised. However, he did not hesitate at all. He instantly activated the Flying Thunder God technique and flashed to the last kunai that had just passed through Obsidian's body. Then, while he was still in midair, he turned around and stabbed his right arm that was flashing with dazzling lightning. BZZT, BZT, BZT. Countless sharp cries sounded as if hundreds and thousands of birds were chirping at the same time. This attack was the technique that made Kakashi famous during the Third Shinobi World War. Chidori. In the blink of an eye, Obito, who was unable to hide in the holy aura space, was unable to dodge. Kakashi's Chidori pierced his right shoulder, causing blood to blossom. Did he succeed? Seeing that Kakashi's Chidori managed to hit Obsidian, the Mai Umbu members including Kurenai and Kurenai were overjoyed. If they can get rid of this member of the Akatsuki, it will be a great blow to the Akatsuki organization, and it will also mean the first major victory for Konoha against the Akatsuki organization. The injured Obsidian didn't panic. Instead, he stared at Kakashi in front of him and said with a sigh, "Kakashi, why did you deliberately avoid my vital parts?" Kakashi was silent for a while. Just now, he had the opportunity to directly pierce through Obsidian's heart, but for some reason, his body subconsciously moved toward Obsidian's right shoulder. Obsidian said lightly, "Unfortunately, you won't have a second chance." Instantly, an emerald blue phantom was projected from Obsidian's body. Even if he can't use divine aura for the time being, with his pair of Manjiki Sharingan, he still has the means to sweep the entire battlefield. Susanoo, Kakashi was taken aback and immediately used Flying Thunder God technique to get away from Obsidian. In just a moment, an emerald blue Susanoo appeared on the battlefield and covered Obsidian's body, protecting him. Huh! Seeing Obsidian activated Susanoo, Hyojin chuckled and immediately shouted, "Explode!" Kacha! Suddenly, a pure white clay centipede drilled out of the ground and entangled Obsidian from below. Obsidian's face turned cold. This? Boom! Chapter 650. Boom! With a huge roar, a violent explosion broke out in Obsidian's emerald blue Susanoo, and the earth trembled slightly with this roar. The shock wave of the explosion instantly squeezed the whole Susanoo, causing it to swell up. Looking from afar, the originally awe-inspiring Susanoo seemed to have become a ball filled with air in an instant. At this moment, the powerful defense of Susanoo formed a closed space inside it, and a shock wave generated by the explosion had no way to vent in this closed space. So all of it surged back, cycling, forming a repeated impact inside Susanoo. Roar. At this time, Obsidian Susanoo let out a roar. With this almost mournful roar, the armor on Susanoo quickly faded, followed by the muscles, then the tendons, and finally only a skeleton was left, barely standing on the battlefield. Obviously, both Susanoo and Obsidian and Susanoo were seriously injured in this explosion. After the smoke dissipated, everyone on the battlefield looked at the interior of Susanoo at the same time. They saw Obsidian half kneeling on the ground, covering his face with his arms. The whole person looked extremely miserable. The Akatsuki red cloud suit on his body was blown to pieces, leaving only some pieces of cloth hanging on his body. His arms, legs, and even his back had obvious scars, and some places were even burnt, emitting bursts of smoke. This set of combo attacks was indeed carefully planned by Hyojin. The clay clone that he first gave to Obsidian to throw into Kimui space, in addition to confusing Obsidian and deceiving Obsidian to leave, it was also a backup plan prepared in advance for a possible fierce battle. Because the clay clone is in Kimui space, Obsidian cannot use Kimui space to avoid attacks from the outside world, because once Obsidian launches Kimui, the Kimui space will form a connection with the shinobi world, and Hyojin can remotely control the clay clone in Kimui space to self-destruct through the channel opened by Obsidian himself. In short, as long as Obsidian tries to hide in Kimui space, Hyojin can use the clay clone in Kimui space to force Obsidian out, unless Obsidian is willing to face the self-destruction of the clay clone in Kimui space. And if Obsidian can't use Kimui for the time being, then Obsidian will inevitably launch Susanoo. This is not difficult to speculate. Regarding ordinary ninjas may have heard of it, but very few really understand it. Even the Manjikyu of the Uchiha family, such as Jishuei, Itachi, and Shinichi, will not easily launch Susanoo if it is not necessary, as it would consume their precious pupil power for no reason. But Hyojin is different. During the period when he was practicing flame release, he used Susanoo almost every day, so he has long been familiar with Susanoo. It can be said that in the current shinobi world, no one knows the advantages and disadvantages of Susanoo better than him. He knows that unless the caster enters the diamond-shaped safe zone between the eyebrows of Susanoo, otherwise the ground under his feet will be the biggest flaw of Susanoo. Well aware of this, Hyojin has already placed a clay centipede under Obsidian's feet, and waited until Obsidian launched Susanoo and covered himself in a closed space before detonating the clay centipede, maximizing the explosive effect of the clay centipede. It's just that Obsidian's physical strength after transplanting the first-generation cells has somewhat exceeded Hyojin's expectation. Let alone killing Obsidian, he couldn't even force Obsidian to use Izanagi even once. As expected of the man who caught Rasengan with his face, he can even resist this. Seeing this, Kuroda cursed silently, and then secretly became vigilant. Ahem. After coughing twice, Obito slowly stood up and said in a hoarse voice, "Do you really think you can kill me like this?" Yamayama's eyes were fixed on Suijin. "Do you think you can kill me like this?" Hyojin shrugged. "How would I know if I don't try?" At this time, Obsidian slowly raised his arms, and in front of everyone, he used the shadow clone technique, and then put one hand on his shadow clone's shoulder and threw it into the Kimui space. Hyojin's face sank. He knows that Obsidian wants to use the shadow clone to destroy the clay clone he left in the Kimui space. So he can only take advantage of the short moment when Obsidian launched Kimui to create a connection between the Kimui space and the shinobi world and detonate the clay clone in the Kimui space. Obsidian seems to have guessed that Hyojin will do this, and immediately stopped launching Kimui. Therefore, the explosion of the clay clone in the Kimui space just rushed out of the twisting vortex, and in an instant, it stopped abruptly, and only a brilliant flame was transmitted to the shinobi world. Seeing this scene, Kakashi's face also sank. Among the Umbu present, only he who has mastered space-time ninjutsu understood what just happened. At this moment, when he saw Obsidian use the shadow clone to destroy the clay clone placed in the Kimui space by the members of Amatsukami, Kakashi knew that Obsidian is once again in an invincible position. After removing the hidden danger, Obsidian's eyes narrowed at this time. Roar! Instantly, Obsidian's emerald blue Susanoo roared, and then the tendons, muscles, and even the armor on its body were restored one by one. In just a moment, the skeleton state of Susanoo has turned into a majestic god. There is no doubt that Obsidian's recovery ability is also amazing after transplanting the Hashirama cells. After a short rest, not only did his injuries recover, even his Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil power has recovered a lot. At this time, Zetsu leaned out from beside Obsidian and said, "Found it. Humph, sure enough." Obsidian snorted lightly and immediately rushed towards a big tree not far behind Hyojin together with the mighty Susanoo. Seeing Obsidian pass over him and rush behind him, Hyojin seemed to be taken aback and his whole body froze in place. Boom! With a loud noise, Obsidian, who was riding Susanoo, easily destroyed the big tree, and then activated Susanoo's huge palm to dig the ground, and grabbed another Hygiene from the ground. Using Susanoo to grab the Hygiene that was found from the ground tightly in his hand, Obsidian said coldly, "I knew that was also a clone. This is your real body." Chapter 651. This? Oh no, not good. Seeing that Obsidian had used Susanoo to capture another member of Amitsukami from the ground, all the Umbu of Mai, like Obsidian, were sure that this was the real body of the member of Amitsukami, and they all exclaimed. Under the control of Susanoo, the corner of Obsidian's mouth rose slightly. "You're finally caught by me." And Hyojin, who was being strangled by Susanoo, was struggling violently at this time, but because the power of Susanoo was too great, not to mention breaking free, even breathing was a little difficult for him. Looking at Hyojin, who was caught in Susanoo's hand, panting violently, it seemed that his breathing was not smooth. Obsidian chuckled and said, "See? This is the absolute strength gap between us." With that, Obsidian glanced at the Umbu of Mai around with disdain, and then said to Hyojin, "This absolute strength gap is not something that you can make up for by playing with 1 or 2 puppet clones and creating 1 or 2 explosions. No matter how you resist, how you struggle, you are doomed to fail, and everything you do is in vain." Obsidian's words were like a heavy hammer, hitting the hearts of the Umbu of my heart. Some Umbu with weak will looked at the Susanoo in front of them, and looked at the members of Amitsukami who were struggling in the hands of Susanoo, and their hearts were filled with despair. In their opinion, even such a powerful member of Amitsukami couldn't defeat this Susanoo. They had no hope. Clang! At this time, an Umbu let go of the long sword in his hand and let it fall to the ground as if he had accepted his fate. This seemed to be a signal, and despair began to spread quickly on the battlefield. Some Umbu even took off the masks on their faces, revealing the faces of fear under the masks. Akagami said angrily, "What are you doing? Do you think you can survive by retreating?" A despairing Umbu said with a numb face, "The Akatsuki can destroy our village with just a few people. What can we do now?" Akagami was furious, but there was nothing he could do. The haze of the destruction of the village has been hidden in the heart of every Mai ninja, and the spirit of the Mai ninja has been swallowed up little by little. So when all the Mai ninja heard the words Akatsuki, they couldn't help but remember the tragedy of the night when a village was destroyed. Obsidian smiled and looked at Kakashi on the other side. His face was full of mockery. Although Kakashi was silent, there was no fear in his eyes, and his eyes were still sharp. Suddenly, Hyojin, who everyone thought was just a doppelganger, rushed towards Obsidian's Susanoo and seemed to want to rescue the real body trapped in the hands of Susanoo. Obsidian glanced at him and said with a smile, "What can a mere doppelganger do? Do you want to rush over and explode?" Although his tone was relaxed, Obsidian was really worried that the captured member of Amitsukami would want to use the self-explosion of the doppelganger to commit suicide in order to keep the secret of Amitsukami. So he changed his mind and threw Hyojin, who he thought was the real body of Susanoo, into the Kamui space. In Obito's view, he now had the protection of Susanoo, and there was also the warning from the underground, so he was not afraid of any variables. Even if he guessed the real body of the opponent and threw the opponent's doppelganger into the Godly Might space, it would not have any effect because at this moment, no one in the field could break his Susanoo. This was the gap of absolute strength. The twisting vortex suddenly appeared and quickly disappeared, and along with it, Hyojin, who was held in the palm of Susanoo, disappeared. After dealing with Hyojin, who was held in the hand of Susanoo, Obsidian turned his head and looked at the suspected doppelganger of Hyojin, who was rushing towards him with a playful expression on his face. At this time, Kuroda was really a little curious. Where exactly did Amitsukami recruit this new member? Because whether his tactical attainment or mental quality, this new member of Amitsukami is impeccable, especially the doppelganger jutsu, which gives him a headache until now, because even with his Manjikyu Sharingan, he can't find the slightest flaw in this doppelganger. His previous experience in distinguishing shadow doppelganger is completely ineffective in the face of this doppelganger jutsu. At this moment, Obsidian's expression became solemn, because he found that Hyojin, who was rushing towards his suspected doppelganger, not only did not show any signs of self-explosion, but he even put his hands together, as if he was about to use some kind of ninjutsu. What does he want to do? Instantly, a doubt surged in Obsidian's heart. For some reason, even though he was sure that the opponent had no means to break his susa, he still felt a faint sense of foreboding in his heart. Mai's group of Umbu also cast their eyes on Hyojin at this moment. Like Obsidian, they couldn't tell whether this Hyojin was the real body or a doppelganger, but they couldn't help but focus on him. In just a few short breaths, Hyojin suddenly attacked in front of Obsidian's emerald blue Susanoo, and his palms suddenly opened at this moment. And when he saw a flash of fluorescence in Hyojin's palm, Obsidian's pupils shrank sharply, and he was shocked. Dust release! Swish! At the moment when no one reacted, the fluorescence in Hyojin's palm suddenly soared, as if it was out of control, and drowned the emerald blue Susanoo in front of him. Crack! After resisting the fluorescence for a moment, the emerald blue shattered inch by inch into countless fragments. Taking advantage of the short time bought by his Susa, Obsidian made a prompt decision and immediately launched Kimui and hid in the Kimui space. After hiding in the Kimui space, he panted and scolded. How could he possibly know dust release? Isn't Inoki the only one in the ninja world who knows dust release? This despicable guy obviously knows dust release, but he didn't release it immediately and deliberately rushed to confuse me. Before Obsidian finished scolding, a dazzling white light flashed beside him. Damn it! Obsidian just remembered that he had just thrown in a Hyojin and the dust release outside that could perform blood inheritance elimination. Then the one inside was undoubtedly just a doppelganger. No, it was a doppelganger that could self-destruct. Boom! In an instant, a huge explosion swallowed Obsidian, who had just hidden in the Kimui space. Chapter 652. With a flash of white fluorescence, the huge emerald blue Susanoo immediately shattered into pieces of debris and scattered in all directions. The scene in front of them made the group of my black ops dumbfounded. The awe-inspiring and invincible Susanoo was so easily defeated. For a time, a strong suspicion surged in their hearts, making them feel incredulous. At this time, a knowledgeable assassin asked his companions around him, "Hey, that should be dust release, right?" Regarding this question, the other Umbu members present also found it difficult to answer, because the fluorescent light just disappeared too fast, almost as soon as it appeared, and the shape was extremely irregular. It was obviously different from the dust release used by the 3 generations Tsuchika Jinoki, so even the Umbu who had seen dust release before were not sure at this moment whether it was really dust release or not. Kurenai analyzed. It should be other ninjutsu would not be able to break Susanoo so easily. With the increasing number of cases of Susanoo in the shinobi world, everyone has a general understanding of the Susanoo used by the Manjikyu Sharingan. That is ordinary ninjutsu. Even the ninjutsu launched by Kekkei Limit, which is at the same level as the Sharingan, is extremely difficult to break through the defense of Susanoo. In theory, only Kekkei Elimination, which is above Kekkei Limit, can destroy Susanoo in an instant. Realizing that this new member of Amatsukami in front of them is likely to be the only ninja in the shinobi world who has mastered the Kekkei Genkai, and is on the same level as the famous members of Amatsukami, such as Homasubi, and Kaze-Chime. All the Umbu members of Amatsukami felt a chill in their hearts and sighed, as expected of Amatsukami. Swish, a kunai flew past, and Kakashi caught it and flashed to Hyojin's side. The place where the huge Susanoo used to be was now empty. Looking at the debris of the Susanoo gradually drifting and annihilating in the air, Kakashi asked with a complex expression, "Did you kill him?" Hyojin gasped and shook his head. "I don't know." What happened to Obsidian now, Hyojin really didn't know. When he just released the dust release chakra, He vaguely saw Obsidian using the Goku technique, so he detonated the clay clone in the Goku space. Therefore, if Obsidian stayed in the shinobi world, he would be drowned by the chakra, and if he hid in the Goku space, he would be devoured by the clay clone. In short, Obsidian is definitely not feeling well at this moment. Of course, Hyojin is also not feeling well at this moment. He has just touched the threshold of dust release, and there is still a long way to go before he can use dust release in actual combat, so the attack just now was completely forced to take a risk. The timing of his release of dust release seemed to be very good, catching Obsidian off guard, but in fact, it was not his intention, because at that time he had lost control of the dust release chakra in his body, and he was faced with the choice of either releasing the dust release chakra out of his body or reaping what he sowed and letting the dust release chakra explode in his body. Hyojin naturally chose the former and released the dust release chakra out of his body. But because he doesn't have the ability to shape this dust release chakra, so he is not sure what form this dust release chakra will take and in which direction it will be released, so he can only resign himself to fate and gamble on his luck. Although the result was not bad, because he was worried that the power of the fusion of earth, fire, and wind chakra wouldn't be enough to break through Obsidian Susanoo. So he blindly increased the proportion of fire and wind chakra, resulting in the fusion of dust release chakra, but its nature is extremely unstable. Although he released the unstable dust release chakra out of his body in time, but in the process, it inevitably injured some of the meridians in his body, causing the Earth release clone body number 2 to suffer damage that can't be seen on the surface. At this time, hidden in his sleeves, his faintly trembling hands are the best proof. But Hyojin didn't show his injuries in front of everyone, but quietly said to the Mai Umbu, "Take this opportunity to retreat." Glancing at the seriously injured people on the clay bird not far away, Kakashi nodded. He also knows that now is not the time to be entangled with the Akatsuki members. Hyojin no longer said anything, endured the pain, took out the last clay bird that he carried with him from the ninja bag on his waist, and gently threw it into the air. Bang! In a burst of white smoke, the clay bird that was originally only the size of a palm immediately expanded into a big bird with a wingspan of several meters. With a light leap, Hyojin jumped on the back of the clay bird, then pointed to the clay bird that carried Gale and the other my members not far away, and said to Kakashi and the others, "I'll lend that clay bird to you for the time being. Don't stay here for too long. They might come back at any time." After saying that, Hyojin immediately urged the clay bird under his feet to quickly fly into the air. Kakashi quickly asked, "Hey, what should we call you?" Standing on a clay bird, Hyojin did not turn around, but just answered casually, "Amatsukumi's Xidagarba," including Kakashi. All the Konoha Umbu members silently chewed on this codename. It seems like they want to remember this codename in their hearts. They want to remember this codename of Amatsukumi, Xidagarba, who played with 3 members of Akatsuki in the palm of his hand. In the Kingdom of Long, the originally lush mountain had been completely shattered at this time. The collapsed mountain rocks were scattered all over the ground in a disorderly manner, causing the entire landscape to change beyond recognition. Everywhere in sight were deep pits of different sizes and crisscrossing ravines, coupled with a raging mountain fire and rolling smoke. Everything in front of them was just like hell. In this hellish battlefield, Danzo stood on a broken rock, controlling his dark red Susanoo to tear the Jura path in Susanoo's hand in half, then threw it aside like throwing garbage. At this time, Danzo looked disdainfully at Tendo and Conan in the air, and with a ferocious expression, he said, "Who's the ant?" Chapter 653. In the air. Little Nan looked at the mortal Dao, animal Dao, hell Dao, hungry ghost Dao, and the remains of the Azura Dao that had just been torn apart on the battlefield. His face was so gloomy that it seemed like it was about to drip water. No one would have thought that Danzo, who was rumored to have a serious soul injury and was seriously injured, would have such a powerful combat power. Not only can he use the 5 practical Kekkei Genkai, such as Hell Release, Rapid Release, Boiling Release, Crystal Release, and Mist Release at will, but he can also use the Man GQ Sharingan Susanoo, as well as the incredibly powerful Wood Release. In the previous battle, the earth-exploding heavenly star cast by Tendo was forcibly broken by Danzo's red Susanoo combined with Wood Release. One must know that although the earth-exploding Tensei performed by Nagato through Tendo is far less powerful than the earth-exploding Tensei performed by his true body, but it is still not something that can be easily broken by anyone. But Danzo, with Susanoo and Wood Release, broke the seal of the earth-exploding Tensei with almost no effort and got out of the earth-exploding Tensei. As for the powerful spiritual beasts that were controlled by the Black Rod, they became pets that could be trampled upon by others under the effects of Wood Escape. They were of no use at all. Unlike Conan, Tendo still had the same indifferent look on his face. The strength shown by Danzo is indeed far beyond Nagato's previous expectations. But even so, it is not enough to move him, because in the entire shinobi world, there is only one strong enemy that can pull his heartstrings, and that is the leader of Amitsukami, Yama. After a while, Tendo said lightly, "Your eyes don't seem to be ordinary Man GQ Sharingan." Although Nagato doesn't know much about the Sharingan, but as a pupillar-type ninja, he can still faintly feel that the Sharingan in the Danzo S eye sockets is different from the others. Moreover, the Danzo S dark red Susanoo was obviously different from the other Susanoo that Nagato had seen. Even Nagato had to admit that the Danzo S Susanoo had refreshed his understanding of the strength of the Susanoo. Danzo chuckled. "Isn't it too late to realize now?" Roar. As soon as Danzo finished, his dark red Susanoo roared at Tendo and Conan in a threatening manner. Conan immediately scolded. "Danzo, do you think you can escape from our Akatsuki? You're dead." Danzo grinned. "There are a lot of people who want to kill this old man, but this old man is still alive and well." Tendo's indifferent face flashed a trace of anger. Danzo's words reminded him of Yahiko's death. Hanzo's short-sightedness and this old man's mistake for not being able to kill you too in the Rain Country. After saying that, Danzo's expression suddenly became fanatical, and he laughed hysterically. "Ha! But just you wait. It won't be long before this old man will personally correct this mistake." Listening to Danzo's arrogant declaration, Conan's eyebrows furrowed. After the fight, she understood that all the rumors about Danzo are false, and Danzo deliberately created such rumors and leaked his whereabouts, seemingly to lure someone into a trap. Tendo's curiosity was piqued by Shimura Danzo, and he asked, "What exactly did you experience? Why do you have Hiriko's Kekkei Jinkai fusion technique? Who helped you do it? Do you want to know?" Pausing for a moment, Danzo grinned and said, "When this old man has the same eyes as you, this old man will personally tell you before twisting your neck." After saying that, Danzo's figure flashed, and together with his dark red Susanoo disappeared. "Don't go." Conan saw this and wanted to chase after him. At this time, Tendo stopped Conan. "Don't chase after him." But Conan looked at Tendo. Her face was full of worry. Before Danzo left, he said, "When this old man has the same eyes as you," which made her particularly concerned because Danzo's words clearly indicated that Danzo is seeking the same Rinnegan as Nagato. Thinking about Danzo deliberately spreading false information in the shinobi world, as well as his strange behavior of deliberately leaking his whereabouts, Conan became even more worried. Tendo shook his head and said in a flat tone, "I underestimated him. Now we can't do anything to him. Even if we catch up with him, it won't be of any use." Because of the enhancement of his physique after the transplantation of the Hashirama cells, Nagato's pupil power has also skyrocketed. This allows him to truly control the 6 paths of pain from a long distance. So this time his true body didn't hide somewhere nearby like before, but far away in the Akatsuki organization's base in the Land of Iron. Because of this, his true body won't be able to catch up for a while. Conan said, "The trap laid by Danzo this time is obviously to plot against someone. I think this matter is not as simple as it seems." Tendo gently nodded. "Well, The pair of Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets is not an ordinary Manjikyu Sharingan. I can feel the power of Omura. What? Conan was taken aback. Seeing the worried expression on Conan's face, Tendo said, "Don't worry, he won't be able to escape from our hands. I'm already on my way here," on the Danzo S side. After escaping from the battlefield, Danzo didn't stop to rest. He put away the Susanoo and used the swift release to quickly get away from the Land of Long. In the battle, just now, although he destroyed 5 of the 6 paths of pain in a row, he also consumed a lot of chakra and pupil power when breaking free from the Tendo's Earth exploding tensei. He deliberately leaked the location of the Land of Long. If the Akatsuki organization can find this place, then the other shinobi villages in Amatsukami can also find this place. So he must get away from this place as soon as possible, lest he runs into the people of Amatsukami before his chakra and pupil power completely recover. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this time, several figures appeared in front of Danzo, all of them wearing the forehead protector of the Kasunagakure village, and there are hundreds of them, completely a ninja army configuration. Seeing Danzo's appearance, panting heavily, obviously having just experienced a battle, the leader of the Kusanagure village laughed and said, "Danzo, hand over the Manjikyu Sharingan, and I can consider sparing your life." Chapter 654. Ho-ho! The whistling sound of the wind constantly echoed in Hyojin's ears, and even though he was high in the sky, he still maintained a high level of vigilance, and the Byakugan in his eye sockets searched for all suspicious targets around him. Until he reached the sea, Hyojin was a little relieved. Looking down at his hands, he curled his lips and said, "The injuries are not light." Previously, he rashly used the dust release, which he was not proficient in, causing serious damage to the meridians of his hands. At this moment, let alone performing any ninjutsu, even raising his hands was extremely difficult. In addition, the clay doppelgangers that he carried with him had been used up in the previous battle, and the only clay bird that could move was the one that carried him. Therefore, even if his hands were intact, his combat strength would still be greatly reduced. After all, a ninja like him who relied on the explosion release of the explosive clay is the most important. But if he wants to be strange, he must have enough explosive clay for him to squander. Therefore, when all kinds of clay products are available, the combat power of a ninja like him will often be unexpectedly strong. It is not uncommon for one person to fight against 100, or even to destroy a village. In the original story, Dead Ale broke into the Sand Crypsis alone and captured the 5th Kazekage alive in front of everyone's eyes. But once the clay products on his body are exhausted, then he will be like a tiger falling to the plains. Compared to Dead Ale, Hyojin is inferior in a protracted battle. Because Dead Ale can quickly shape the explosive clay on the spot, he only needs to carry enough explosive clay and make whatever he needs on the spot. But Hyojin doesn't have the ability to quickly shape the explosive clay, so he can only carry clay products that have been shaped in advance. But in this way, there will be an awkward situation like he is now. Clay centipedes, clay spiders, and the like still had a bunch of them that hadn't been used. However, the clay clones and clay birds have been used up in the battle, causing them to lack life-saving and mobility methods. This was a clear shortcoming, causing their overall combat strength to plummet. Not long after, the fortress hidden in the clouds finally appeared in Hyojin's field of vision. After safely returning to the fortress, Hyojin immediately went to the laboratory and put the second Earth release clone into the large nutrition tank to repair it. This time, he actually didn't prepare to fight at all. When he received the news, he found that one of the Danzo's hiding places was near the deserted island where he practiced the dust release, so he came to take a look. Although the second Earth release clone has not been fully developed and isn't very reliable in combat, it is blessed in scouting. There are clay birds in the sky, clay spiders in the ground, and clay centipedes in the ground. Coupled with the Byakugan in its eye sockets, it is just right to confirm the Danzo's whereabouts, so he didn't return to the fortress to swap clones. He didn't expect that before he could find the Danzo, he would run into Red, Shien, and Gale in danger. He had no choice but to act hastily, so he didn't make sufficient preparations in all aspects. But the result wasn't too bad. At least he saved some of his subordinates and confirmed that the Akatsuki has joined the hunt for the Danzo. Long country. Soon, Nagato led Shinichi, Beepot, Juzo, Ghost Mermaid, Lotus, Sasori, and other members of the Akatsuki to the battlefield and met up with Conan, who stayed on the battlefield to collect information. Because the Land of Iron and the Land of Long are neighbors of the Akatsuki, Nagato's action was very fast. The reason why he brought so many members of the Akatsuki was not because he was afraid of the Danzo, but because he felt that the more manpower he had, the higher the efficiency of the hunt for the Danzo would be. As for the Danzo, although the strength of the Akatsuki has surpassed the Kaga level and belongs to the top of the shinobi world, but Nagato still didn't put him in his eyes. In front of his true body, his evaluation of the Danzo is still that of an ant. After meeting up with Conan, the Akatsuki started to chase after the Danzo. Because Conan's paper butterfly has been following the Danzo from a distance, the Akatsuki quickly followed the Danzo's retreat route and arrived at the place where the Danzo encountered the Kusanagi ninjas. But at this moment, the place was completely silent. Broken limbs and dismembered corpses were everywhere, and the blood on the ground was pooling together, forming a stream, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of blood. And the most horrifying thing is that many of the Kusanagi ninjas were pierced through by the wood release and were hanging in the air in rows, looking extremely horrifying. Looking at this hellish scene, even the members of the Akatsuki who were used to seeing life and death couldn't help but frown. There is no doubt that a battle took place here not long ago, and the two sides should be the Danzo and the Kusanagi ninjas. As for the result, the corpses of the Kusanagi ninjas are enough to explain everything. Shinichi muttered with a dark face. Could it be that Danzo did all of this alone? I know that he's a bad guy, but I didn't expect that he is not only bad, but also crazy. If the Akatsuki's target was other people, then Shinichi may not have come, but this time their target was Danzo, so he volunteered to join the hunt. But he didn't expect that Danzo's bloodthirst would be so heavy that he actually slaughtered hundreds of Kusanagi ninjas, which made him feel slightly nauseous. Beepot Juzo observed the surroundings and said in confusion, Danzo is much more ruthless than us. He could have easily broken out of the encirclement. So why did he waste his chakra on these people? Berserk Lotus from the Kagaya clan said with disdain, What's the use of bullying Kusanagi ninjas? At this time, Conan brought a Kusanagi ninja to his side, checked the other's breath, and immediately got up and said to Nagato, Nagato, there's still one alive here. Nagato's figure flashed and came to the side of the dying Kusanagi ninja, pressed one hand on the other's forehead, extracted the other's soul, and browsed the memory of the battle just now. Country of Tion. Danzo, who was covered in blood, flew through the forest, and his body was filled with a terrifying aura. After slaughtering hundreds of Kusanagi ninjas, he did not stop at all. He went all the way east through the country of Iron and came to the country of Tion. At this time, a figure flashing with blue lightning slammed into Danzo, forcing him to stop. Swish, swish, swish. Then, one figure after another fell around, surrounding Danzo. The figure flashing with lightning is naturally Lei Ing of the 4 generations of Cloud Village. After he forced Danzo to stop, he looked at Danzo covered in blood and asked, Are you Danzo now, or Hamui? Chapter 655. Boom! The dark red Susanoo fiercely collided with the dazzling lightning, making a deafening roar. Immediately afterward, the shock waves surged out in all directions, and several thick trees that several people couldn't even wrap their arms around were instantly blown away. Along with them, a large number of cloud ninjas were also blown away. Fortunately, Hachibi's Jinchuriki was also present on the scene. He resisted the shock wave of the torrent and entered the state of half-tailed beast, using his 8 powerful tails to catch most of the cloud ninjas that were sent flying. In the field, after easily swatting away the attack of 4 generations Lei Ying, Danzo grinned. His face was full of ridicule. Is your anger only this much? Activating the lightning release chakra mode. 4 generations Lei Ying, bathed in the dazzling lightning, gasped while glaring at Danzo. You damn bastard. Danzo smiled casually. It turns out that the lament of a defeated dog is so pleasant to the ear. Danzo, who defeated the army of the 6 Paths of Pain and the Grass Ninja Village, and made the leader of the Akatsuki organization helpless, is no longer interested in acting like a schizophrenic in front of the Cloud Ninjas. So in the face of the previous question of 4 generations Lei Ying, his answer was the roar of Susanoo. Now, Danzo finally experienced how powerful he is. This infinite power made him addicted to it, unable to extricate himself. This is the reason why he couldn't control his surging killing intent and slaughtered hundreds of grass ninjas, even though he could save chakra and forcibly break through the encirclement of the grass ninjas. Danzo, you really pissed me off this time. Pausing for a moment, 4 generations Lei Ying roared. How can I allow a scoundrel like you to challenge Lei Ying's honor? After saying that, 4 generations Lei Ying activated the lightning escape chakra mode to its limit. The lightning escape chakra mode on his body instantly expanded. At the same time, all the muscles on his body expanded, and his hair stood up like a hedgehog. Without a doubt, 4 generations Lei Ying's killing intent had been completely aroused. Boom! In a flash of lightning that could not be seen clearly, 4 generations Lei Ying, who was in the extreme lightning escape chakra mode, punched the dark red Susanoo of the Danzo. Crack! A crack appeared on the sturdy outer armor of the Susanoo. Danzo, who was inside the Susanoo, was a little taken aback by this. Boom! But before the Danzo could activate the Susanoo to launch a counterattack, 4 generations Lei Ying's figure suddenly disappeared, and then immediately flashed behind the Susanoo, launching another fierce attack. As soon as the Danzo turned around, 4 generations Lei Ying's figure disappeared again. Boom! Then another roar echoed in the ears of the Danzo. And in this sound of heavy attacks, 4 generations Lei Ying, who had raised his speed to the limit, launched a round of fierce attacks around the huge Susanoo as if he could teleport. Through this continuous fierce attack, he was looking for the flaws of the Susanoo. From the side, it looked like a lightning was constantly lingering around the Susanoo, and every time the lightning flashed, there would be a conspicuous crack on the Susanoo. The face of the Danzo, who was under fierce attack, was slightly gloomy at this moment, but his pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan eyes were still shining with a strange brilliance, with a relaxed and playful look. Suddenly, 4 generations Lei Ying found a flaw under the ribs of the Susanoo and immediately shouted without hesitation, Thunder Abuse Water Level Chio Dance. 4 generations Lei Ying's full strength slashed the ribs of the Susanoo, causing the huge Susanoo to stagger. Kacha kacha! In an instant, a large area under the ribs of the Susanoo shattered. Whoosh! At this moment, with a whistling sound, the 8 tails Jinchuriki in the distance quietly entered the tailed beast state and shot out a Bijubijutsu that had been brewing for a long time, hitting the ribs of Shimura Danzo accurately. Boom! 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 After being hit by this tailed beast jade, the Susanoo, whose body was already full of cracks, could no longer support it and exploded in a huge explosion. Whoosh! Without waiting for the smoke to disperse, a Cloud Jonin holding a chakra sword launched the body flicker technique and attacked the Danzo, who had lost the protection of the Susanoo. Without the slightest hesitation, the chakra sword in the hand of the Cloud Jonin fiercely slashed toward the Danzo. Did it work? Beautiful. Quickly cut him down. Seeing this scene, the surrounding Cloud ninjas immediately applauded. However, just as the chakra sword was about to cut the head of the Danzo, less than a centimeter away from the tip of the Danzo's nose, the chakra sword suddenly stopped. The Cloud ninjas were taken aback, and when they looked carefully, they saw that the cloud Jonin holding the sword had blue veins bulging on his arms, and his face was also gritting his teeth, as if he had used all his strength, but the sword in his hand was unable to cut down, as if there was an invisible barrier separating him from the Danzo. At this time, the Danzo retracted the Jinjutsu and stretched out his right hand. In an instant, countless wildly growing trees swarmed out from his right hand and fiercely pierced through the Kyumo Jonin, who was under the control of the Jinjutsu and was unable to cut down the sword in his hand. The impact sent the Jonin flying away like a piece of rag. With a smile, the Danzo's eyes narrowed, and a new dark red Susanoo appeared in front of everyone. And the moment it appeared, the Susanoo grabbed the Yondaime Leiying, who had just used his full strength. "Big brother." Not far away, the Hachibi's Jinchuriki exclaimed. Whoosh! At this time, countless trees rose from the ground, firmly imprisoning the tailed beast in place. Standing in the middle of the Susanoo, the Danzo glanced at the Yondaime Leiying, who was held in the Susanoo's hand, and then looked at the Hachibi's Jinchuriki, who was trapped by his own wood release, and said with a smile, "The era of the 5 great shinobi villages will end in this old man's hands. The era of the gods has arrived, and this old man is the god of the shinobi world. How can Danzo be so strong?" Seeing the Yondaime Leiying and the Hachibi's Jinchuriki, who stood at the peak of the shinobi world, being easily defeated by the Danzo, the Cloud Ninjas were stunned, and their faces were full of disbelief. They never thought that their own AB and AB combination would be defeated in the hands of the Danzo. Just when the Cloud Ninjas thought that a disaster was coming, a paper butterfly leisurely flew to the battlefield. Chapter 656. Cough, cough. After being thrown out by Danzo Susanoo, 4 generations Leiying fell heavily to the ground, coughing violently while gasping for breath. Regarding the sudden departure of Danzo, 4 generations Leiying was full of doubts, but he also felt afraid. If all the elite Cloud troops he led were killed here, the blow to Cloud Village would be immeasurable, and Cloud Village, one of the 5 great shinobi villages, may even fall into decline. Whoosh! At this time, a group of Cloud Ninjas immediately surrounded him. "Leiying-sama, are you okay?" 4 generations Leiying did not answer the concerned questions of his subordinates, but pushed aside the several Cloud Ninjas blocking his view and locked his eyes on the paper butterfly fluttering in the battlefield. "Big brother, are you okay? Why do you look like a fool?" Hachibi's Jinchuriki also rushed over at this time and asked while humming a rap song. Listening to Hachibi's rap song, 4 generations Leiying punched Hachibi and then ordered all the Cloud Ninjas, "Take the wounded, we will retreat immediately." Hachibi followed the gaze of 4 generations Leiying and glanced at the paper butterfly that was gradually flying away and asked, "What's wrong?" 4 generations Leiying said with a solemn expression, "Danzo left so decisively. It means that someone is chasing him, and the strength of the other party must be very strong, stronger than us." Hachibi is also a smart person and immediately responded, "So, Danzo didn't kill us just now because he wanted us to help him resist the pursuers and buy time for him to escape?" 4 generations Leiying nodded with a gloomy face, because he really can't think of any other reason that would make Danzo let them go so decisively. And the only thing that can make Danzo feel fear is either Amitsukami or Akatsuki. Amitsukami and the 5 great shinobi villages now have a preliminary cooperation relationship. So even if they meet, the 2 sides may not necessarily fight. So the one who is chasing Danzo is most likely a member of Akatsuki. After realizing the seriousness of the problem, a group of Cloud Ninjas quickly cleaned the battlefield and then quickly evacuated with all the wounded and dead. On the way back to the Land of Lightning, Hachibi said with lingering fear, "This time was really too thrilling. I didn't expect that Danzo not only has a pair of Sharingan that can use Susanoo, but also such a powerful wood release. Even if I used the power of the Hachibi, I still couldn't break free from the shackles of his wood release. It's simply too scary." Because of the use of wood release, Hachibi, as a Jinchuriki, can't use his full strength when facing Danzo, which makes him very afraid of Danzo. For generations, Lei Ying, who has always been reckless, said with a rare self-reflection, "I was too careless and almost caused Cloud Village to fall into eternal damnation." Hachibi asked, "What should we do now?" After suppressing the unwillingness and anger in his heart, 4 generations Lei Ying said with a slightly dejected expression, "That madman Danzo is no longer someone that our Cloud Village can deal with. We can only convene the Kage Assembly and gather the strength of the 5 great shinobi villages to deal with him together." After this battle, 4 generations Lei Ying, who is extremely confident in his own strength, also realized the strength of Danzo and knows that only by gathering the power of the 5 Kage can they deal with Danzo. In the land of hot water, after passing through the land of Tion, Danzo still went all the way east and came to the land of hot water near the sea. In an open area, the galloping Danzo suddenly stopped and said, "Come out." At this time, Orochimaru walked out leisurely from behind a big tree not far away. Tisuke, Danzo, it seems that your current situation is not very good. Just from the appearance alone, Danzo's body is covered with blood at the moment, his robe is also torn, and even his breathing is a little disordered, completely in a panic, completely in line with the rumors that his soul has gone wrong, and he is seriously injured. Danzo snorted coldly. "Orochimaru, do you also want this old man's Sharingan?" Orochimaru looked up and down at Danzo, stuck out his tongue, and licked his lips, and said with a greedy look on his face, "This body of yours is all made by me. Isn't it natural to return it to me?" Looking at the greed in Orochimaru's eyes, Danzo suddenly laughed. "Before you, do you know who has stopped this old man?" Orochimaru said, "I'm not interested in who those idiots are, but I do want to thank them for helping me consume so much of your chakra, saving me a lot of trouble." At this time, the Eternal Man GQ Sharingan in Danzo's eyes suddenly rotated. How? Almost at the moment when Danzo launched the power of the eyes, Orochimaru was surprised to find that he could not move. Danzo walked in front of Orochimaru with a gloomy face and said, "Orochimaru, how dare you appear in front of this old man like this? The real stupid one is actually you." Orochimaru's expression was stiff. It seemed that he still didn't believe that Danzo could easily subdue him with just a look. "Speaking of this old man, I really want to thank you. If it weren't for your tricks in the ritual, this old man would not have the power I have now." After a pause, Danzo continued, "You are obviously a very good chess piece. What a pity." After saying that, Danzo launched the Susanoo. Soon, the dark red Susanoo grabbed Orochimaru, who was trapped in the Jinjutsu and couldn't move, and the blood mist that permeated around Susanoo also enveloped Orochimaru's body. The body of Orochimaru, who was enveloped by the blood mist, immediately melted. The great pain made him, as one of the Sannin couldn't help but cry out loud. Listening to Orochimaru's painful wails, Danzo seemed to be enjoying a beautiful piece of music, closing his eyes and enjoying it with a ferocious and satisfied expression on his face. After a while, Orochimaru completely melted in the hands of Danzo's Susanoo. At this time, Danzo turned his head to the east. He went all the way east through the land of iron, the land of field, and the land of hot water. His purpose was to go to the land of water across the sea. He is in urgent need of a safe foothold, and the lonely Mist Village is obviously a good target. First, the Mist Village was once controlled by Akatsuki, so the Mist Village is certainly not the territory of Amatsukami. Otherwise, the Akatsuki that controls the Mist Village would have already discovered it, and they wouldn't be looking for Amatsukami all over the shinobi world. Second, the Mist Village hates the Akatsuki that played with them, so the Mist Village is one of the best places to hide from the Akatsuki. Third, the Mist Village is isolated in the sea, and the news is relatively backward, so they shouldn't know about his killing along the way. So as long as he pretends that there's a problem with his soul, and the boiling release ninja in his body takes control of his body, he will have a great chance to get close to the 4 generations Mizukage and used the Jinjutsu to control the 4 generations Mizuki. Just like the Akatsuki before, he can secretly turn the Mist Village into his own territory. Chapter 657. Danzo activated the swift release and walked on the waves of the vast sea. His speed was extremely fast, and in less than half a day, he easily crossed the land of whirlpools located in the southeast of the land of hot water and completely entered the boundless sea. At this time, he has gotten rid of all the pursuers. Even the paper butterfly that has been following him from a distance was cleverly thrown off by him in the land of hot water. Not only that, but with his rich experience, he also divided 2 shadow clones. One went north into the land of the moon, and the other went south into the land of fire. One in the light and one in the dark. He forged his tracks to confuse the pursuers. Even with so many means arranged, he didn't slow down in the slightest when crossing the sea. He still maintained a swift release at full speed without any regard for the consumption of chakra. Looking down from the sky, he looked like an invisible long sword slashing at the surface of the sea, leaving behind a thin line of water on the surface of the sea, leaving behind a thin wave. The reason for this is because time is the key to everything. Danzo must hurry up and get in touch with the 4 generations Mizuki Jigura before the news of his killing spread to the Mist Village. He must use the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to control the Mist Village's 4 generations Mizuki Jigura, making the Mist Village the only isolated and relatively isolated village out of the 5 great shinobi villages is his temporary shelter. One must know that in the previous battles, although he defeated the 6 Paths of Pain of the Akatsuki organization, the hundreds of shinobi of the Kusanagakure village, the AB combination of Kyomo and Orochimaru, but his own consumption is not small, especially when facing the 6 Paths of Pain. He used all his means to deal with the other 5 paths, except for the Tendo. So he currently needs a safe hiding place to recover. In addition, the efficiency of collecting information is too low for him to be alone. So he also needs a channel to collect information about Amatsukami, and the Mist Village, one of the 5 great shinobi villages, is obviously the best choice. As long as he can secretly control the 4 generations Mizuki, then all the shinobi of the Mist Village will become his eyes and ears to gather information for him. As for whether or not he could control the 4 generations Mizuki with the perfect Jinchuriki, Danzo wasn't worried at all. Through the previous fight with Orochimaru, or, to be more precise, through the fight with Orochimaru, Danzo has deeply realized how powerful the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets is, coupled with his wood release. The Jinchuriki is nothing but a toy in his eyes. After a long time, an archipelago appeared before the Danzo's eyes. Seeing the archipelago means that they are about to reach the land of water, which is separated from the shinobi continent by the sea, so the Danzo immediately slowed down and quietly passed the small islands guarded by the Mist Ninjas. He can't reveal his whereabouts yet, because no one can guarantee that there are no spies from other forces among the Mist Ninjas guarding the island, so he can't stay here any longer. He has to go directly to the Mist Village and directly contact the Mist Village's higher-ups. And the excuse to contact the Mist Village's higher-ups is also ready-made. Among the 5 Kekai Genkai that Danzo fused with, one of them is a boil-release Kekai Genkai from the Mist Village. In order to secretly control the Mist Village, Danzo has already begun to make arrangements. He deliberately announced that something went wrong during the ritual, that there are major hidden dangers in his soul, and that his body may be controlled by other souls at any time. After a month or 2 of fermentation, Danzo believes that the Mist Village must have already heard of this rumor. Therefore, he only needs to pretend that the will of the boil-release Kekai Genkai is controlling his body, and there's a great chance that he can meet the 4 generations Mizuki. Of this, Danzo is confident. He is sure that no village can resist the temptation of a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan, especially this kind of Manjikyu Sharingan that is almost at his fingertips. Not long after, with the help of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Danzo successfully avoided the Mist Village's patrols and sneaked all the way to the Mist Village. When he reached the Mizukage building, he closed the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets and revealed himself. Who is it? The sudden appearance of Shimura Danzo surprised a group of mist ninjas guarding the Mizukage building. No one thought that someone could sneak in here without a sound. Danzo covered his chest and pretended to be injured while shouting hoarsely. "It's me. I'm Kiko Susumu. I have important news to report to Mizukage-sama. Quick, take me to Mizukage-sama." In a land of long whoosh. Whoosh. Whoosh with a burst of wind. Several figures landed on the battlefield where Danzo and 6 Pats of Pain were fighting. Hey, I remember there should be a mountain here, right? Yeah, I also remember that there was a mountain here. Could it be that the entire mountain collapsed? What happened here? Who did it? Looking at the unrecognizable scene in front of them, the ninjas wearing the rock protector looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were filled with disbelief. At this time, the captain of the scouting team ordered, "Don't just stare blankly. Immediately check the battlefield and collect information. I have a hunch that something big is going to happen in the shinobi world. We must report the situation here to the village as soon as possible." Yes. After the several rock ninjas responded, they immediately dispersed to various parts of the battlefield and carefully inspected the battlefield. The same thing happened on the battlefield where Danzo and Kasanagakure shinobi fought, as well as on the battlefield where Danzo and Kyomo's AB fought. All kinds of ninjas were traveling back and forth on these battlefields, collecting and delivering all kinds of information. Among them were the elite Umbu who were responsible for collecting information from the 5 great ninja villages, as well as the scouting ninjas from Kasanagakure, Takanobi, and other small and large mercenary organizations, as well as various intelligence dealers in the black market. In this short day, on every battlefield in the Land of Long, the Land of Iron, the Land of Field, and the Land of Hot Water, there were several groups of ninjas busily collecting information at every moment. Coincidentally, there were even 2 or 3 villages reconnaissance teams bumping into each other, but everyone had a tacit understanding and just collected their own information, and they lived in harmony with each other. And with the work of these investigative ninjas belonging to various shinobi villages and organizations, the results of Danzo's trip to the east were also pieced together. Looking at this terrible record, no matter which side the scouting ninjas were aware of the seriousness of the problem. Therefore, the news of Shimura Danzo's massacre of the Akatsuki, Kusanagi, and Kyomo spread like wildfire in the shinobi world. Chapter 658. Mist Village, inside the Mizukage building. Drip, drip, Shimura Danzo, who was following behind the 2 Umbu members of the Mist Village, was constantly dripping with blood. As he walked, his blood flowed along with him. At this time, one of the Umbu members looked back at Danzo and saw that Danzo's wounds were open and his body was covered in blood. The Umbu member of the Mist Village felt a little less vigilant and asked casually, "Do you need me to bandage you first?" Danzo shook his head and said weakly, "Don't delay. I don't know how long I can hold on. If Danzo recovers, things will become troublesome. It's more important to see Mizukage-sama first." All right. The Umbu member of the Mist Village didn't say anything else. It didn't take long for them to come to the underground palace under the Mizukage building. After taking Danzo to a secret room, the Umbu member of the Mist Village said, "You stay here. We have already sent someone to report to Mizukage-sama. I think Mizukage-sama will come to see you soon." Danzo nodded silently. Next to the secret room, where Danzo was located, Mei Aojurai and the 6-tailed Jinchuriki of the Mist Village were observing Danzo through a special one-way glass. Mei frowned and asked, "Do you think he is that Susumu Kiko?" Natsutsuki Kiko is the name of the boiling release Kekiai Genkai of the Mist Village that was fused with Shimura Danzo in the ritual. However, because Natsutsuki Kiko is very rebellious and has very little contact with the village, coupled with the frequent rebellions in the Mist Village in recent years, the internal management of the village is in chaos, so there is no detailed file on Natsutsuki Kiko in the village. The Umbu members of the Mist Village were not familiar with Susumu Kiko. Even Mei, who also has the boiling release, had only seen Susumu Kiko before, so they didn't have any friendship with him. If this happened in other villages, it might be a little strange. However, in the Hidden Fog Village, which had the title of Blood Mist Village, it was normal. In fact, even now, there's still many solitary ninjas in the Mist Village. They rarely have any contact with the village, and some of them have even remained in a state of being uncontactable for a long time. Of course, it was also because of this that the Danzo's route targeted Susumu Kiko, because this kind of lone target was the easiest to strike. Ching said, "There are indeed related rumors outside. Danzo's soul seemed to have a problem during the ritual. The souls that were integrated into his body would compete with each other for control of the body." Mei Ming shook her head. "Even so, I still feel that something is wrong." He sneaked into the village at this time and threatened to meet 4 generations. "It's too suspicious." One of the Mist elites on the side chuckled and said, "This guy is already injured to this extent. What's there to worry about?" Even if the soul controlling his body is Danzo, the one who should be worried should be him. "Humph, this is the Hidden Fog Village. Where does he think it is? Since he's here, we have a final say." Mei glanced at Qing and asked, "Are the injuries on his body real?" Qing nodded. "I have checked with the Byakugan before. The wounds on his body are real, and the one on his chest is a penetrating wound. It's very serious." Mei pondered for a moment. "I remember that the injuries on his body should be from the encounter with the Mayumbu, right? Penetrating wound. This reminds me of a ninjutsu." Speaking of this, Mei and Qing looked at each other, and then both of them said in unison, "Chidori." Yu Gao, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Don't forget, he has a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan." Listening to Yu Gao's words, all the leaders of the Mist Village frowned. Because the Mizukage of 4 generations was controlled by the Manjikyu Sharingan, the Mist Village was extremely afraid of the Manjikyu Sharingan. So even if Danzo was injured, as long as he had a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets, the Mist Village had to be careful. Suddenly, an Umbu member of the Mist Village came to the room and said to the leaders of the Mist Village, "Mizukage-sama already knows." Mei Ming asked, "What does 4 generations want to do with him?" The Umbu member quickly replied, "Mizukage-sama decided to meet him in person and listen to his secret." "What?" Mei Ming was stunned for a moment, and then immediately wondered, why does 4 generations want to meet him in person? Isn't this too risky? Let's interrogate him. We can also pry open his mouth. Ayajirai narrowed her eyes and asked, 4 generations wants to meet him alone?" The Umbu member nodded. "Yes." Ayajirai then asked, "Is he going to meet him here?" The Umbu member shook his head and said, "Mizukage-sama wants to meet him on To-Do Island." Soon, after disguising himself, Danzo was secretly escorted out of the Mist Village by a team of Umbu members and rushed to the To-Do Island, located in the southwest of the Land of Water. On the way, Danzo asked the Umbu member who was escorting him, "Where are we going?" The Umbu member said fiercely, "Shut up, don't ask what you shouldn't ask, just follow us obediently." Danzo's face turned cold, and immediately activated the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, using Jinjutsu to instantly control the 4 Umbu members who were escorting him, and asked again, "Speak, where are we going?" The Umbu leader replied with a dull expression, "We are going to To-Do Island. Mizukage-sama is waiting to meet you there." To-Do Island? After a pause, Danzo asked again, "Why does Mizukage-sama want to meet me on To-Do Island?" The Umbu leader replied, "Because Mizukage-sama is now on To-Do Island." Danzo didn't doubt him, and immediately lifted the Jinjutsu. The 4 Umbu members who escorted Danzo didn't realize that they were under the Jinjutsu, and silently escorted Danzo to To-Do Island. After a long time, Danzo set foot on To-Do Island. Soon, Danzo found that the entire island was heavily guarded, and he saw hundreds of mist ninjas, and there were many patrolling ships on the surrounding sea. Obviously, this is a military fortress of the Mist Village. Seeing this scene, Danzo wasn't worried, but happy. In his opinion, the more cautious the Mist Village is, the greater his chances of success will be. all the way to the center of the island. The Umbu leader pointed to a dark passage deep in the ground in front of him and said, "Mizukage-sama is inside." Danzo nodded, and then quickly stepped into the dark passage. He wasn't worried that there would be any traps here, or rather, he didn't put the Mist Village in his eyes at all. Even if the Mist Village really set up some traps here for him, it's just a killing spree. After a moment, when Danzo reached the end of the passage, a short figure appeared in front of him. This person is the Mist Village's 4 generations Mizukage-sama Yagura. The Mist Village is mine. Looking at the 4 generations, Mizukage-sama not far away, Danzo smiled playfully. Chapter 659. Pitter, patter, patter. The rain curtain covered the whole world, and in this thick mist, the entire Mist Village was looming, making it seem unreal. Suddenly, a gray gull flew through the rain curtain like an arrow and landed on the Mizukage building. The ninja of the Mist Village quickly removed the scroll from the gull's leg and rushed to Mei, who was guarding the Mizukage building, and presented the urgent report from the Shinobi continent to her. After undoing the seal on the scroll, Mei Ming took a quick glance, and her expression changed drastically. She said to Qing, who was standing by the side, quickly gather the people. We must hurry to Bird Fairy Island immediately." Aojirai was puzzled. What's wrong? Mei's face was as cold as ice. "I'm afraid that Danzo is playing us. That guy isn't desperate at all. He is now a complete monster. The leader of Akatsuki and the AB group of Kyumo were defeated by him one after another. This time he came to the Mist Village. It's very likely that he has ideas about 4 generations." Aojirai took the report handed over by Mei and looked at it with an embarrassed expression. "Damn it, we must not let him succeed." The fact that the Mizukage, the head of the village, was secretly manipulated by Akatsuki and reduced to a puppet is already a great shame for the Mist Village. If Danzo does the same thing again, then the dignity of the Mist Village will really be trampled into the mud. To Dodo Island, underground palace. The dark environment didn't hinder Danzo's sharp eyes. He glanced at the 4 generations Mizukage standing quietly in the deepest part of the underground palace and confirmed the identity of the other party from the 3-tailed chakra that was coming out of the other party's body. "You dare to meet me alone? Should I say that you are stupid? Or should I say that you are arrogant? The so-called Mizukage is this kind of trash. No wonder he became a puppet of Akatsuki." Danzo couldn't help but show a look of disdain on his face. He thought that there would be some twists and turns in the process of meeting the 4 generations Mizukage. After all, the Mist Village has suffered such a big loss, so it's impossible for the 4 generations Mizukage to not guard against the Manjikyu Sharingan. However, he had never thought that things would go so smoothly and that he would be able to meet the person in question so easily. And thinking that as long as he controls the 4 generations Mizukage in front of him, then the Kiri village, one of the 5 great shinobi villages, will fall into his hands, Danzo was in a good mood and walked over, and the black pupils in his eyes turned scarlet. 4 generations Mizukage Goji Yagura suddenly asked, "Is this the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan?" Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? The Danzo-esque expression froze, and he stopped in his tracks. He knows that the Sharingan in his eye sockets is extraordinary, surpassing the level of the Manjikyu Sharingan, and is only 1 step away from the Rinnegan, which is known as the Sage's Eye, but he doesn't know that the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is also a top secret within the Uchiha clan. So this pair of eyes is called the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. With an inexhaustible pupil power, the prefix eternal is just right. After a pause, Danzo asked, "What else do you know about the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? Speak." At this moment, a voice came from the shadows of the underground palace. "Yes, this is the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan." It turns out that 4 generations Mizukage Goji Yagura didn't speak to Danzo from the beginning to the end. The person he just asked was the person hiding in the shadows, and after getting a reply from the other party, Yagura slightly bowed and asked, "Do you need me to stay and assist you?" At this moment, a series of footsteps could be heard in the quiet underground palace. Very soon, A figure wearing a black cloak with golden edges and a flame-patterned mask walked out from the shadows. He said calmly, "There's no need for that. You may leave." 4 generations Mizukage Goji Yagura quickly saluted the figure and then disappeared from the dark underground palace. "Homasubi, how come you are here?" After seeing the figure walking out of the shadows, Danzo was taken aback. There is no doubt that the person who appeared in the underground palace is none other than Hyojin. He sneered and said mockingly, "The one who should be surprised is me. I really didn't expect that you would fall into my hands." Hyojin wasn't lying. When he received a message from Yagura in the air fortress, he was really surprised. He didn't expect that Danzo would fall into his hands. But now that he knows the exact whereabouts of Danzo, he naturally won't let go of this heaven-sent opportunity. Therefore, he ordered Yagura to lead Danzo to this remote island, while preparing to kill Danzo and retrieve the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Danzo suddenly understood. So, it turns out that Amatsukamie has secretly controlled the Mist Village. The appearance of Homasubi and the respectful attitude of 4 generations Mizukage towards Homasubi all indicate that the Mist Village has probably become a puppet of Amatsukamie. Then, Danzo frowned, "But how did you do it?" This old man has already sensed that 4 generations Mizukage chakra is normal. There is no sign of him being controlled by Jinjutsu at all. Hyojin lightly said, "Why would a dead man know such things?" As soon as Hyojin's voice fell, 2 figures walked out of the shadows on both sides. These 2 figures were also wearing a black cloak with golden edges and a flame pattern mask. Three Homasubi? You. Looking at the 2 Homasubi from Amatsukamie, Danzo was shocked. Like everyone else, he always thought that there were only 2 Homasubi in Amatsukamie, 1 male and 1 female. He didn't expect that there was a 3rd Homasubi hidden in Amatsukamie. And according to the practice of Amatsukamie, those who can become Homasubi should at least have a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. In other words, there are a total of 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan in Amatsukamie. This is really strange to Danzo. He even had the illusion that the Uchiha clan has already surrendered to Amatsukamie. But soon, the shock on Danzo's face turned into ecstasy. He covered his eyes with his hands and laughed wildly. "Ha ha ha, great! This old man doesn't have to look for you all over the shinobi world." After saying that, the Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets flashed with a strange light. Without wasting any more time, Suijin instantly activated his Manjikyu Sharingan and activated his Susanoo Manjikyu. And as Hyojin activated his Susanoo, Jishuei and Itachi also activated their respective Susanoo. Good. This old man wants to see whose Susanoo is stronger. In an instant, a fierce chakra burst out of Danzo's body, followed by a dark red projection projected from his body, letting out a beast-like roar. Chapter 660. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 tall and mighty Susanoo burst out almost at the same time, instantly squeezing through the dome of the underground palace and making a huge roar. In the splashing gravel and billowing smoke, Hyojin, Jishuei, and Itachi tacitly arranged themselves into a triangular formation, using their respective Susanoo to surround the dark red Susanoo of Danzo in the center. In the ruins of the underground palace, the 4 Susanoo were different from each other. Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo was holding a flaming long sword, surrounded by dazzling golden flames. From a distance, it looked like a majestic god of fire. Jishuei's Yagami Susanoo was emerald green, holding the fire-red artifact Yagami mirror in its left hand, calm and reserved. Itachi's Susanoo was orange, holding a fire-engulfing artifact gourd in its right hand, and its eyes were glowing with divine light, looking majestic and extraordinary. Compared to the 3 orthodox Susanoo of Homasubi, Danzo's demon Susanoo didn't look like a god, but more like a demon that crawled out of hell. It had sharp claws and fangs, and it was standing on all 4s like a beast. Its body was a size larger than the other 3 Susanoo, and its whole body was filled with a terrifying blood mist that could melt rocks and plants, giving people a chilling feeling. Its killing intent and violence were completely unconcealed, almost overflowing. Boom! Suddenly, a burst of thunder sounded in the sky, followed by dark clouds and howling winds. This was the case in the country of water. The weather changed without warning. A moment ago, the sky was clear, but in the next moment, lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and dark clouds covered the sky. As the lightning flashed and the sky gradually darkened, the atmosphere on the island became even more gloomy and oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. Obviously, an unprecedented Susanoo war in the shinobi world is about to break out. It's a pity that when Yagura left the underground palace before, he followed Hyojin's orders and withdrew all the mist ninjas on the island and in the nearby area. So there was no audience for this rare Susanoo battle. In the field, despite being surrounded by 3 Susanoo, Danzo showed no signs of fear. Instead, he laughed wildly. "Fools, you think you're hunting this old man, but this old man is actually hunting you." Flame Demon? Humph! From today onwards, Amatsukami Senyemo will be removed from the shinobi world, and this old man will step on your bones to reach the peak of the shinobi world. After defeating Nagato's 6 Paths of Pain, Kusanagi cures hundreds of shinobi, Kumo's AB and AB, as well as Orochi Maru, Danzo's confidence in his own strength has reached the peak. Although he hasn't obtained the Rinnegan yet, at this time, he doesn't put the 3 flame demons in front of him in his eyes. He firmly believes that he is the strongest person in the shinobi world, and that he will definitely inform the shinobi world in the future. Something's wrong. How did this guy's chakra become so terrifying? Hyojin can ignore Danzo's madness, but he can't ignore the terrifying chakra on Danzo's body. Whether it is the pupillary power displayed by the eternal Manjiki Sharingan in his eye sockets or the sharp increase in chakra around his body, Danzo's strength is far beyond that of the previous battle in the lava cave. It can even be said that they are 2 different people. Therefore, although Hyojin doesn't know the series of dazzling achievements of Danzo, but in his heart, his vigilance towards Danzo has been secretly raised by several levels. Jishuei and Itachi are both experienced ninjas. Seeing the terrifying power of Danzo, they didn't underestimate the enemy even though they have the advantage in numbers, nor did they become arrogant because of the artifact in their hands. Both of them secretly raised their vigilance like Hyojin. Pitter, patter, patter. At this moment, a dense drizzle fell from the gloomy sky. The falling rain seemed to be a signal, and the 4 Susanoo almost moved at the same time. Shimura Danzo's Susanoo demon was the largest of the 3, and it had an obvious advantage in speed and strength. It slammed its thick palms on the ground. Boom! Amidst the roar, the whole island seemed to tremble, and the ground in front of Shimura Danzo was completely overturned under the heavy impact. At this time, the demon Susanoo of Danzo picked up the 10-meter-long boulder and smashed it hard at Itachi Susanoo of 10 punches on its left. Whoosh! The boulder, which was more than 10 meters long and looked like a 3-story building, flew towards Itachi's Susanoo of 10 punches, the smallest of the 4 Susanoo. Clang! Because of saving the pupil power, Itachi rarely used Susanoo, so he was not proficient in the use of Susanoo. He was a little slow and failed to avoid the flying boulder. The Susanoo of 10 punches was smashed by the boulder, and the whole Susanoo of 10 punches flew out fiercely, plowing a gully several meters deep on the ground. Taking advantage of this gap, Danzo immediately urged the demon Susanoo, which was on all 4s like a beast, to pounce on Jishuei's Susanoo of 8 punches on the other side. While flying, Danzo, who was in the diamond-shaped area between the demon Susanoo's eyebrows, shouted, "Uchiha Jishuei, this old man was right. You are a member of Amatsukami." Jishuei Susanoo was not a secret in my village, so as soon as Jishuei used Susanoo, Danzo immediately recognized Jishuei's identity. Jishuei did not talk nonsense with Danzo and immediately raised the artifact Yada no Kagami to meet it. Boom! Another violent roar exploded on the island. The 2 Susanoo violently collided, smashing a large pit 7 or 8 meters deep on the ground. In the tremor, the cracks on the edge of the pit continued to spread around, and in a moment, these cracks were like a spider web, almost covering the entire island. At the same time, the demon Susanoo, who had hit the artifact Yada no Kagami, was sent flying. Its huge body kept rolling on the ground, plowing deep ditches and raising the forest on the island to the ground. Naturally, Jishui did not have it easy either. The strength of the demon Susanoo of Shimizu is incredible. Even the golden flame Susanoo of Hyuga Shimizu is no match for it. So even though Shursui has the artifact Yada no Kagami, he still felt very strenuous to block this blow. Under the impact of the opponent's attack, his Yada no Susanoo was forced to take several steps back and finally leaned on the ground, knocking down a large number of trees and smashing a large pit in the ground. So strong. For a moment, this was the only thought in Jishui's mind. Chapter 661. Danzo's Demon Susanoo was the real complete Susanoo. Whether it was size, speed, strength, or flexibility, it crushed the ordinary Susanoo. Although Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan's pupillary power would not dry up because of the transplanted Hashirama cells, but in his eye sockets, it was only Manjikyu Sharingan, not eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. So no matter how much pupillary power he used, he could only upgrade Susanoo to a level close to the complete Susanoo, but he could not become the real complete Susanoo. Therefore, in the battle with Danzo's Demon Susa, whether it was him or Itachi, they were at a great disadvantage. And his advantage over Itachi was that his artifact, Yada no Kagami, was a defensive type and could be used in battle, while Itachi's artifact, Tenseigan, was an offensive type. Because Hyojin still needed the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets, Itachi could not seal Danzo into Tenseigan at all. Boom! After hitting a raised steep slope, Demon Susa, who was fiercely bounced back by Yada no Kagami, barely managed to control his body. Danzo, who was dizzy from the recoil, was quite surprised. He knew something about Itachi's artifact, Tenseigan. After all, during the Battle of My Village, Itachi used Tenseigan to seal obsidian once, but he didn't know anything about Jishui's artifact, Yada no Kagami, so he mistakenly thought that this recoil ability was the special ability of Jishui's Susanoo, so he was a little afraid of Jishui's Yada no Kagami. Go to hell! At this time, accompanied by a whistling sound, Hyojin's golden flame Susa broke through the curtain of rain, like a god descending to earth. He waved the long flame sword in his hand and slashed at Danzo's Demon Susa. Danzo, who had just been bounced back by Yada no Kagami, had no way to avoid, so he had to raise his arms to block. Boom! In an instant, the dazzling fiery long sword chopped down on the arms of the Danzo Demon Susanoo. The speed and flexibility shown by Danzo really scared Hyojin. This degree of control of Susanoo was something that even he couldn't match. If Jishui didn't have the artifact Yada no Kagami, he would have been easily knocked away by Danzo like Itachi. Therefore, he didn't hold back and used all his strength. Therefore, the flaming sword quickly cut through Demon Susanoo's left arm and cut into his chest. While the huge impact acted on the Demon Susanoo, it also acted on the ground under the Demon Susanoo. Suddenly, with Danzo's Demon Susanoo as the center, cracks spread in all directions and intertwined with the cracks on the ground before. Boom! Another clap of thunder resounded through the sky. Damn it! In the rain curtain of lightning and thunder, Danzo was also ruthless. Not only did he wave the remaining right arm of Demon Susanoo to grab Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo, he even urged Demon Susanoo to bite and tear Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo with his sharp fangs. He knew very well that only the golden flame Susanoo, which was also a complete form Susanoo, was a strong opponent, so he tried to get rid of Itachi and Jishui first, and then fight with Hyojin one-on-one. However, he didn't expect Jishui to have the artifact Yada no Kagami, so his rhythm was interrupted. Rumble. The two complete form Susanoo wrestled with each other. causing the whole island to shake, and the cracks on the ground became deeper and more numerous. The surrounding waves surged violently crashing against the small island, making the entire island look like it was on the verge of collapse. Itachi and Jishui, who got a chance to breathe, also joined the battle. With Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo in the front, Itachi's 10 punches Susanoo, and Jishui's Yada no Kagami Susanoo also had room to play. Each Susanoo is a symbol of invincibility in the shinobi world, and just imagine how earth-shattering it would be if 4 Susanoo were to fight each other. On the small island, whether it was the buildings, trees, or rocks, everything was wiped out in the battle between the 4 Susanoo, and even the island itself was in the process of collapsing. After a while, all 4 Susanoo had lost their previous magical power. Each of them was dim and damaged. Among them, the most seriously damaged was Danzo's demon Susanoo. It was almost cut into pieces by the other 3-foot Susanoo. Its arms and legs were either cut off or torn off. In such an adverse situation, Danzo showed a fierce expression and roared, "Today, this old man will let you Uchiha see the true power of the Sharingan." After roaring, the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets rotated rapidly while flashing with a strange brilliance. Mitsuki. With the eruption of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Danzo activated the Manjikyu pupil technique that he had been hiding for a long time. In an instant, the blood mist around the demon Susanoo suddenly soared, and then converged in the air into a bloody river filled with the aura of the underworld. Hyojin, who was at the front, realized that something was wrong and quickly retreated, but his golden flame Susanoo was still grazed by the Danzo's bloody river, and his entire left arm and half of his left shoulder were turned into nothingness. Hyojin was shocked and quickly warned Jishui and Itachi. "Everyone be careful." Hearing Hyojin's warning, Jishui and Itachi quickly retreated. At this time, Danzo, who was surrounded by the blood-red sticks, laughed and said, "Do you see this? This blood that can dissolve everything is the real sticks that my Sharingan used to communicate with the Mitsutsu River in Underworld." Ha ha ha, Uchiha's kaleidoscopes. I'm afraid you would never expect such a day to come. Laughing unscrupulously, Danzo activated his pupil technique and launched an attack. In the heavy rain, the river Styx floated in the air like a bloody ribbon, quickly sweeping toward Hyojin, Jishui, and Itachi. Susanoo, seeing that the river Styx of the Mitsutsuka was rushing towards him, there was no way to avoid it, so Kuroto had no choice but to use the Manjikyu pupil technique. In an instant, his golden flame Susanoo was wrapped in a thick layer of golden flame armor, and an arm stretched out from both sides of his ribs, a total of 4 arms and 4 swords, and his whole body was shining with golden light. Amaterasu. Itachi knew that his Susanoo couldn't avoid the Danzo's bloody river Styx, so he also used the Manjikyu pupil technique. In an instant, a circle of black flames appeared in the rain, surrounding Itachi's Susanoo in the center. Yada no Kagami. Jishui quickly retreated while protecting the Yada no Kagami in front of him. Chapter 662. The Styx was like a blood-colored ribbon floating in the air. Not only was it extremely fast, but its trajectory was also extremely erratic, completely unpredictable. No matter what it touched along the way, whether it was a rock or a tree, everything turned into nothingness in an instant, as if it never existed. Even the rain in the air and the soil on the ground couldn't be spared. In the face of such a terrifying and powerful Manjikyu jutsu of the Danzo, Hyojin, Jishui, and Itachi each used their own means, either using pupillary jutsu or activating their artifact. On Hyojin's side, after activating the Manjikyu jutsu, Kuroto immediately activated the golden flame Susanoo, inserting the 4 flame swords of his 4 arms into the ground, and then fully activated the golden flames, making the entire golden flame Susanoo look like a huge golden torch wrapped in golden flames. Itachi also activated Amaterasu, using the black flames to protect himself, Jishui didn't have the ability to resist the Danzo's Mitsutsukawa's pupillary jutsu, so he had to fully activate the artifact, Yada no Kagami, and hid his own Susanoo behind the artifact. In the blink of an eye, the blood sticks floated through the rain and swept toward Hyojin's trio. Hyojin, who was at the forefront, was naturally the first to be swept by the blood sticks. The blood in the blood sticks and the dazzling golden flames of Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo instantly overlapped with each other, making a harsh poochie-poochie sound. In an instant, a pungent mist surged out amidst the ear-piercing sound. It spread in all directions, causing the gloomy island to have an indescribable hazy and illusory air. At the same time, one end of the blood sticks swept in front of Itachi, making a large area of contact with the black flames that protected Itachi's 10 punches Susanoo. One is the blood sticks that can corrode everything, and the other is the inextinguishable black flames. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for these two things to encounter each other in the shinobi world. But the moment they encountered each other, a fierce battle of life and death broke out. The black flames spread crazily toward the Bloody Styx River, trying to burn the bloody water. The bloody water in the Styx River also corroded the black flames crazily, trying to dissolve the unyielding black flames. Both of them were unique existences. For a while, neither of them could do anything to the other. After being delayed by Hyojin and Itachi for a while, the other end of the Crimson Styx finally swept toward Jishui's Yada Susanoo, which was retreating rapidly. Jishui made a prompt decision and hurriedly used the divine artifact, Yada no Kagami, to block the blood-colored sticks that was sweeping towards him. Then he pressed down and pressed the blood-colored sticks that was sweeping towards him to the ground. Pucci, the artifact Yada no Kagami, could block the crimson sticks, but the ground could not. Therefore, when Jishui pressed the crimson sticks that was sweeping toward him into the ground in front of him was instantly corroded into a bottomless pit. Kacha. This bottomless pit seemed to be the last straw that broke the camel's back. All kinds of cracks on the ground intertwined with each other at this moment, producing a chain effect, and the whole ground began to collapse. The huge shock caused the four Susanoo, who were fighting on the island, to become unstable at the same time, and they staggered a few steps. At this moment, whether it was Hyojin's side or Danzo who was being besieged, they all realized that the island seemed to be unable to withstand the destruction of the four Susanoo and was on the verge of collapse. But even so, neither side had any intention to stop or retreat. At this point, whether it was Hyojin or Danzo, neither of them could accept defeat. For them, only one side can leave this island alive today. Of course, that is if the island can hold on. Danzo clasped his hands together. His expression was distorted, and his saliva was splattering everywhere as he tried his best to activate the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets. And under the full activation of his pupil power, the crimson sticks that was consumed in the golden and black flames was constantly replenished. As a result, this battle of 1 against 3 ended up in a stalemate as both sides consumed each other's energy. Frankly speaking, Danzo's Manjikyu Sharingan technique, Mitsuki no Kagami, is very overbearing. It perfectly combines the elements of destruction, strangeness, and speed. If one is not vigilant in advance, even a Kaga-level expert is likely to die in front of this Manjikyu Sharingan technique. But Hyojin and the others are not weaklings. The reason why they were temporarily suppressed by Danzo was not only because of the overbearing Mitsuki no Kagami, but also because Danzo's pupil power suppressed them. Although Hyojin's Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is not inferior to Danzo's, but the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan implanted in this fire release clone has neither the blessing of Hashirama's cells, nor has it gone through the ritual. In terms of the strength of chakra, it is not a match for Danzo, who can almost be called a perfect ninja. Without the support of the powerful chakra, he is naturally at a disadvantage in the competition of pupil power. And Jishui and Itachi both have Manjikyu Sharingan. In terms of pupil power, They're inferior to Danzo's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. So even if Itachi has the overbearing Manjikyu Sharingan technique like Amaterasu, he is still suppressed by Danzo. The fierce confrontation of pupil power is still going on, but the island under their feet is somewhat unable to hold on. Kacha! Kacha! The sound of rocks cracking can be heard one after another on the island. The cracks on the ground are increasing in number and depth. Some are even directly connected to the sea, causing seawater to pour in. In the curtain of lightning and thunder, under the surging waves, the entire Tori Island is like a large ship that is about to capsize, struggling to hold on. And the bloody river Styx of Danzo is like an eraser, and Tori Island is like a painting on a canvas. In the stalemate, the bloody river Styx that is constantly rolling up and down is like an eraser randomly rubbing on the painting, erasing the existence of the island one by one. More and more seawater is pouring in, almost drowning 70 to 80% of the island. Many broken rocks on the island fall into the raging sea with a roar, disappearing without a trace, causing the area of the island to shrink rapidly. In such a harsh environment, Hyojin knows that he has to fight, so he gritted his teeth and at the same time pulled out the 4 flaming swords that are guarding the surroundings to resist the bloody river Styx and threw them one by one at Danzo's demon that is not far away. At the same time, he also activated his golden flame Susu at the cost of sacrificing half of his body, forcibly crossing the bloody river Styx and pouncing towards Danzo. Chapter 663. Swish, 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 accompanied by a burst of whistling sounds, for dazzling flaming swords cut through the rain one after another, slashing towards the Danzo's demon Susanoo in the distance. Your Sharingan is mine, the Danzo shouted, and with a ferocious expression, he urged the demon Susanoo to meet it. Suijin is well aware of the power of the golden flame Susanoo, and he knows that even with the defensive power of the demon Susanoo, if he is hit head-on, it won't be easy to deal with. But at this time, he could not help but covet Hyojin's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets had also been waiting for a long time. In any case, he could not allow himself to miss the opportunity to get the Rinnegan this time. So even if the 4 dazzling flaming swords rushed towards him, he still met them without hesitation. In an instant, the demon Susanoo swung his powerful forearm and forcefully slapped away the 2 flaming swords that were at the forefront of the group. Boom! Boom! With 2 loud noises, the flaming swords that were slapped away swept out and hit the ground heavily, stirring up a large amount of gravel, causing the already crumbling island to become even more fragmented. Immediately after, the 3rd flaming sword directly drew an arc in the air. While breaking the rain, it also cut off the right arm of the Danzo's demon Susanoo. Finally, the 4th flaming sword whistled and pierced into the left chest of the Danzo's demon Susanoo. Roar! The demon Susanoo, whose chest was pierced by the flaming sword, suddenly burst out with a heart-wrenching roar that hurt people's eardrums. And at this time, Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo also flew over. Boom! At this moment, the sound of the collision of the 2 complete Susanoo and the sound of thunder in the air sounded at the same time. Under the curtain of lightning and thunder, the 2 behemoths once again engaged in the most primitive, most violent wrestle on this shattered island, where seawater flowed in. At this time, the condition of the 2 Susanoo was extremely poor. Danzo's demon Susanoo's entire right arm had been severed, and his chest had been pierced by a fiery longsword, leaving a hole several meters wide. As for Hyojin's golden blaze, Susanoo, half of his body had been melted away by the bloody waters of the river Styx, and he was in a wretched state of having his limbs severed. The 2 complete forms Susanoo were already an arrow at the end of its flight, so after a few rounds of fighting, they were even more broken. Danzo seized the opportunity and abandoned his demon Susanoo. His body flashed, and he entered Hyojin's golden blaze Susanoo. Hyojin was shocked. He didn't expect Danzo to be so crazy, but his hands didn't slow down. He immediately used flame release, filling the interior of the Susanoo with dazzling golden flames. Whoosh, facing the boundless golden flames in front of him, a ruthless glint flashed in Danzo's eyes. Instead of retreating, he directly activated the rapid release and rushed toward Suijin while enduring the burning of the golden flames with a sharp whooshing sound. After grabbing Hyojin's neck with one hand, Danzo grinned and said, "There can only be one god in the ninja world, and that is this old man. Dark release." At the moment when Danzo grabbed his neck, Hyojin felt that the chakra in his body was leaking out uncontrollably, and he immediately understood that Danzo had used dark release to absorb the chakra. At this time, in the struggle, the mask on Hyojin's face also fell, revealing his immature face hidden under the mask. Looking at the face of Hyojin's fire release clone, Danzo was quite surprised. He frowned and said, "Younger than this old man expected, really not a simple Uchiha." In fact, Danzo has long felt that Homusubi of Amatsukami, who has been helping him to prepare for the Kekkei Genkai fusion ceremony, is not that old, but he didn't expect that the one he regarded as a mortal enemy is just a girl who looks only 16 or 17 years old. Hyojin, who was grabbed by the throat, gasped and said, "Cough, cough, are you surprised?" Danzo, who was still burned by the golden flames, narrowed his eyes and said, "Everything is no longer important. Your eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is mine, and the ninja world is also mine." After saying that, the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets flashed with a strange light. My pupil force. Suddenly, Hyojin's vision became blurred, and he couldn't see anything in front of him, and he felt that his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil force was rapidly fading away. Danzo suddenly laughed wildly. "Ha! How is it? This is also this old man's unique pupil technique. Your pupil force will soon belong to this old man." Danzo actually has a pupil technique that can extract pupil force from the air. This is completely out of everyone's expectation. Fortunately, when Danzo used this new pupil technique, whether it was the Demon Susanoo or the Sanjitsu that trapped Jishuei and Itachi, all disappeared automatically. Obviously, Danzo can't maintain the other Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil force while extracting the pupil force. Flame, Yain Senpai. Without the entanglement of the blood sticks, Jishuei and Itachi instantly urged their respective Susanoo to rush up, trying to rescue Hyojin, who was being extracted by Danzo. Danzo, who has been burned by the golden flame and has completely lost its human appearance. At this time, he opened his mouth and laughed. No one can stop this old man from becoming a god. Accompanied by this presumptuous laughter, countless trees swarmed out from the ground. These would release that were as violent as Shimura Danzo's mood immediately entangled Shursui and Itachi Susanoo, trapping them in place, unable to move at all. How can Danzo's would release be so strong? Jishuei was taken aback. After transplanting the Hashirama cells, he actually figured out some skills to use would release, but it's far from being as powerful as Danzo's would release. On the other side, Itachi couldn't care too much at this time. While releasing Amaterasu to burn the wood release that trapped him, he was preparing to use the artifact Tenseigan sword to seal Danzo and save Hyojin, who was being extracted by Danzo. Danzo seemed to have a premonition of something and immediately grasped the void in the direction of Itachi with his empty left hand. He still didn't use the Sharingan pupil technique, but once again activated wood release, using wood release to wrap Itachi up. Because chakra and the pupil technique were being absorbed by Danzo at the same time, Hyojin's golden flame Susanoo collapsed little by little, and the golden flame that burned Danzo also slowly dissipated. While strangling Hyojin and using wood release to suppress Jishuei and Itachi, Danzo looked up to the sky and roared like a winner. The Rinnegan belongs to this old man. This old man will ascend to the top and become a god today. At this time, Hyojin, who was strangled by the neck, suddenly showed a smile and said in a very calm tone, It seems that in this state, you really can't use the ability related to the Sharingan. Listening to Hyojin's words, Danzo was stunned for a moment. Chapter 664. Danzo's ferocious face, which had been badly burned by the golden flames, suddenly flashed with a trace of doubt. After obtaining the power of omniscience that could distort the boundary between life and death, Danzo's intuition has become sharper and sharper, and it is precisely because of this keen intuition that he has been able to avoid several crises. After listening to Hyojin's words just now, he didn't know why, but a sense of uneasiness welled up in his heart. Facing the warning from his intuition, Danzo didn't ignore it. Instead, he carefully looked around the battlefield. However, the doubt on his face didn't disappear at all. Instead, it grew stronger. This was because at this moment on the battlefield, both Jishui and Itachi were trapped by the wood release. Although both of them used various methods to try and break through the wood release, it was obviously not something that could be done in a short time. As for Homusubi, who was being strangled by the neck and having his chakra and ocular powers extracted, he didn't even have the slightest resistance. He was like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Where is this uneasiness coming from? Unable to find a reason, Danzo's uneasiness grew, and the doubt on his face became heavier. Everything on the battlefield was clearly under his control, and there was no possibility of the opponent turning the tables. Therefore, he didn't understand why his heart was filled with uneasiness. At this time, Danzo shifted his gaze to Hyojin's face and shouted hysterically, "Why aren't you afraid? Why aren't you afraid? Why aren't you willing to accept your fate?" "I never accept my fate. My fate is in my own hands." Hyojin, who was close to losing his sight, said in a calm tone as if he didn't care about his chakra and ocular powers being extracted. Danzo's burnt face suddenly twisted, and he snarled, "This time, you lost. It's your Amatsukami that lost. Do you know that even the leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato, was defeated by this old man? What makes you think you can compete with this old man? This old man has the strongest Sharingan, the strongest wood release, hell release, speed release, crystal release, boiling release, and mist release. This old man is invincible, and this old man will ascend to the peak of the shinobi world." The calmer Hyojin was, the more flustered Danzo felt. His hysterical roar didn't seem to be to make Hyojin yield, but to convince himself to resist the growing uneasiness in the depths of his heart. After confirming that he can't use any abilities related to the Sharingan, Hyojin chuckled. "Nagato will lose because he thinks that he is already a god, and I will win because I know that I'm not a god yet." With that, Hyojin's head tilted and he lost consciousness. "You?" Seeing this, Danzo was stunned for a moment. He vaguely felt that something has disappeared from Suijin's body, but because his Manjikyu Sharingan is currently absorbing the pupillary power of Suijin's Manjikyu Sharingan, all of his abilities are greatly limited, so he can't accurately determine what it is that disappeared from Suijin's body for a while. However, for some reason, when the flame devil in his hand lost consciousness, the uneasiness in his heart skyrocketed. A warning that came from his soul was frantically telling him to run. Run. Boom. Boom. At this time, another rumble of thunder sounded in the gloomy sky. The rain became heavier and heavier, turning from a drizzle to a torrential downpour. Accompanied by the howling wind and the surging waves, it was a scene of doomsday. Standing on the broken island, Danzo held the unconscious Homusubi in his hand and shouted, "Even if the end of the world comes today, it will not be able to stop this old man." His reason was blinded by madness. He ignored the warning from his inner intuition and continued to greedily absorb the pupillary powers of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Homusubi's eye sockets. With the absorption of the pupillary powers, the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets also changed. The original gear-shaped Manjikyu pattern gradually spread into a circle of Rinnegan lines, and the blood-like scarlet color also gradually faded. Soon, I will be able to obtain the legendary Sage's Eye. Feeling the evolution trend of the Sharingan in his eye sockets, Danzo was ecstatic. In a trance, he seemed to see the Rinnegan right in front of him. As long as he persisted a little longer, he would be able to obtain the Rinnegan. But at this moment, he suddenly felt an indescribably powerful chakra approaching him at a rapid speed, even faster than him who was using Hakushin at full strength. And the moment he sensed this chakra, his heart pounded violently, as if he had encountered a natural enemy, and his body instinctively reacted with fear. Whoosh! Accompanied by a harsh whistling sound, a sapphire blue figure flew through the rain like a meteor. In just a blink of an eye, the figure that was still far away in the sky suddenly appeared behind Danzo, and without waiting for Danzo to react, the figure waved a black dagger and pierced through Danzo's body. Puff! Danzo spat out a mouthful of blood, then mechanically looked back, and after seeing the person who attacked him, his pupils suddenly shrank. It's you? Hyojin. There is no doubt that the one who attacked Danzo was Hyojin, who was using the Een release body. After confirming that during the absorption process, his fire clone and Danzo were unable to use any abilities related to the Sharingan, Hyojin decisively withdrew his spiritual body from the fire clone, and then returned to the Een release body that was deployed not far away from Terodo Island, and activated the second backup plan. As Hyojin said before, he will win because he knows that he is not a god. So he will either not make a move, or once he makes a move, he will go all out like a lion hunting a rabbit to ensure his victory. The Een release body is not his final trump card. At this moment in the distant sky, the energy cannon of the Sky Fortress is charging and aiming at Terodo Island. If the Een release body is unable to win, then the energy cannon in the Sky Fortress at 200% overload will completely erase the entire Terodo Island from the world in an instant. Because of this, Hyojin did not wear the Yama mask with the demon pattern on it this time. Staring at Hyojin in the Tenseigan chakra mode, staring at Hyojin's eyes that seemed to contain the sun, moon, and stars, Danzo's hideous face was full of shock. How could it be you? A mere cannon fodder of the Hyuga branch family. A poor worm who can't even control his own life and death. How could he be the leader of Amatsukami? First Sentai. But soon, the evolution of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets pulled Danzo back from his thoughts. He glared at Suijin and roared, "Whether you are the leader of Amatsukami or not, in this old man's eyes, you are just a small fry of the Hyuga family, a bug that I can pinch in my hand and kill whenever I want." Is that so? Hyojin glanced at the black dagger that pierced Danzo's body and chuckled. This kind of injury is not even worth mentioning to this old man. This old man only wants halfway through his words. Danzo couldn't help but vomit a mouthful of blood. Then he was surprised to find that the place where Hyojin's dagger pierced had completely lost feeling, and this numbness seemed to be spreading. Swish! After pulling out the black dagger that pierced Danzo's body, Hyojin played with the dagger and said, "This is called Truth-Seeking Ball, formed by the fusion of Yin and Yang, 5 elements and 7 chakra. Without the power of the 6 realms or the immortal art chakra, you don't even have the qualification to touch it, let alone resist it. And if you are stabbed by it, even with your current body, it will be difficult for you to recover." Looking at the substance in Suijin's hand that sometimes turned into a black ball and sometimes into a black dagger, Danzo's expression turned solemn as he muttered, "Truth-seeking ball?" Danzo, who had experienced the Kekkei Genkai fusion ritual, understood what it meant to fuse Yin and Yang, 5 elements and 7 chakra, so he was very clear about the power of this black ball. Hyojin then said, "Just now, you have missed the last chance to escape. Now please die quietly. How can this old man die in the hands of a mere Hyuga branch family?" After a loud shout, Danzo ignored the injuries on his body and used his empty hand to grasp at Hyojin. Rumble! In an instant, countless trees were uprooted from the ground and swarmed towards Hyojin. But at this moment, the black ball in Hyojin's hand suddenly turned into a black longsword, flying and blocking all the trees that were rushing towards Hyojin. These trees that were strengthened by the wood release chakra were supposed to be very tough and strong, but under the black longsword slash, they were like ordinary trees, easily chopped into pieces. The trees that covered the sky were actually blocked by the black longsword, unable to get close to Hyojin at all. Danzo was shocked. How is this possible? This old man's wood release is stronger than a Hashirama. How can it not be able to deal with you? Hyojin was speechless and said, "You haven't even touched the threshold of the immortal technique, and you still dare to compete with a Hashirama and would release. You are really ignorant and fearless. If it was a Hashirama who used wood release, a true seeking ball wouldn't be enough. After all, wood release is supported by the immortal technique. It is one of the most difficult abilities to deal with in the shinobi world." Hyojin was too lazy to deal with Danzo. He casually waved his hand, and the trees that were rushing towards him were immediately repelled. At this time, Danzo suddenly noticed the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets when he used Rain Pull, and immediately exclaimed, "Your eyes are not Byakugan. Whose eyes did you transplant?" After repelling all the trees, Hyojin slowly walked towards Danzo. "These are my eyes." Danzo retreated while shouting, "No, this is impossible. This is not the Byakugan. You can't fool this old man." Hyojin lightly said, "The Sharingan can evolve into Manjikyu Sharingan, Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and even Rinnegan, so why can't the Byakugan evolve? These eyes of mine are the true treasure of the Hyuga clan." Danzo asked, "What is it called?" "Tenseigan. Second cycle." Chapter 666. Tenseigan. Danzo stared at the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets, seemingly fascinated by the bright light of the stars contained in the Tenseigan. Because of the activities of the Manjikyu Uchiha, even if he hates the Uchiha clan, in his heart, Danzo still firmly believes that the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan is not comparable to the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. He even felt that the two were not on the same level at all. Or to be more precise, all other pupil technique, Kekiai Limit, are dwarfed in front of the Sharingan that can continuously evolve, because the Manjikyu Sharingan, the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and even the higher level Rinnegan, known as the Sages, are beyond the level of ordinary pupil techniques. But after seeing the pair of Tenseigan in Hyojin's eyes, he realized something and muttered, "No wonder your Hyuga clan and the Uchiha clan can be called the two great pupil bloodline clans. It turns out that the Byakugan can also evolve." At this time, Jishuei and Itachi in the distance broke through the obstruction of the Danzo S would release one after another, urging their respectives, accompanied by a whistling sound, rushed over. Senior. After seeing Hyojin personally take action, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Just like everyone else, the invincible image of Hyojin, the leader of Amatsukami, was deeply engraved in Jishuei and Itachi's hearts. Therefore, as long as Hyojin was present, no matter what kind of enemy they faced, they were confident. Hyojin nodded at Jishuei and Itachi, who were panting heavily. Danzo turned his attention to the two, as he gritted his teeth and roared, "Uchiha Jishuei, Itachi Uchiha, you two bastards have hidden your strength well." After fighting for a while, Itachi's mask of Balrog had fallen off, and Jishuei's identity was exposed when he used Susanoo, so Danzo recognized them. And when he thought of the fact that all the members of Amatsukami were hiding right under his nose, swaggering in and out of the village, Danzo couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Jishuei and Itachi ignored Danzo's insults, instead focusing their attention on the seemingly unconscious Uchiha-kan, who was still clutched in Danzo's hand. Itachi couldn't help but shout, "Senior Yin, are you all right?" Danzo raised Hyojin's fire body clone and grinned at Itachi. "What do you think?" At this moment, Hyojin's fire body clone had lost the support of its soul, and its aura was completely depleted. At first glance, it looked like a corpse that had just died. Itachi's face was immediately covered with a layer of cold frost. He had always liked to hide his emotions, but now his killing intent had completely soared. Jishui was also shocked and angry, and hurriedly said to Hyojin with a face full of shame, "Senpai, I'm sorry, we underestimated Danzo's strength and let Takan fall into his hands. He is now absorbing Takan's pupil power. We must stop him." Hyojin waved his hand and said lightly, "Don't worry, I'm here." Hyojin has been having a headache about how to solve the problem of Danzo. It's not that he can't defeat Danzo, but because Danzo has mastered the forbidden technique, Izanagi, that can change fate of the Uchiha clan. If Danzo is really forced into a desperate situation, with Danzo's ruthless character, he will definitely sacrifice his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to activate Izanagi to save his life. But Hyojin doesn't have any means to stop Danzo from activating Izanagi. At most, he can only affect Danzo from activating Izanagi. Therefore, how to solve the big problem of Danzo while preserving the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eye sockets has become a difficult problem for Hyojin. It is also because of this concern that Hyojin didn't use En Release to fight with Danzo from the beginning, but tried to use his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to fight with Danzo's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. In order to find a way to solve the problem of Danzo's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan without damaging Danzo's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Initially, Hyojin was hoping to exhaust Danzo's chakra through a 3-on-1 siege, so that Danzo would not be able to use the forbidden technique Izanagi that requires a large amount of chakra to activate. But as Jishui said just now, they all underestimated the strength of Danzo. They didn't expect that Danzo's strength would soar to such an extent after the adaptation period. Even though they were 3 against 1, they were still at a disadvantage in the end. Danzo even had a terrifying pupil technique that can directly absorb the pupil power of others, which caught Hyojin off guard. But soon Hyojin, who was controlling the fire clone, found that this was not a bad thing, but a godsend opportunity, because he found that Danzo temporarily lost any ability related to the Sharingan when absorbing the pupil power. In other words, in the process of absorbing the pupil power, Danzo couldn't activate Izanagi. After confirming this point, Suijin didn't hesitate and immediately withdrew his spirit body from the fire release clone and used the En Release to join the battlefield again. Looking at Hyojin slowly walking towards him, Danzo raised Hyojin's fire clone in his hand and shouted, "Hyojin, your person is in this old man's hands. Aren't you afraid that this old man will kill her? You can't escape." Hyojin's face was expressionless as he continued to walk towards Danzo. In his eyes, his fire clone is not a hostage in the hands of Danzo, but a shackle that restricts Danzo from using the forbidden jutsu Izanagi. Seeing Hyojin's indifference, Danzo mistakenly thought that Hyojin is ruthless and doesn't care about the safety of his subordinates. After all, he is such a person, so he no longer threatened Hyojin with the fire clone in his hand, but launched a ninjutsu towards Hyojin. In an instant, crystal release, nether release, boiling release, mist release, and other Kekai ninjutsu were used one after another, but all of them were easily resolved by Hyojin. Looking at Hyojin's unstoppable pace, and feeling the evolution of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets, Danzo roared with a crazy expression. "Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more." However, what Danzo doesn't understand is that the closer he is to the Rinnegan, the closer he is to death. If he stopped absorbing the pupil power at this time, threw Hyojin's fire clone aside, and turned around and ran away, Hyojin wouldn't be able to do anything to him, but obviously he was too greedy to realize this. At this time, after seeing Danzo's eyes began to show obvious changes, Hyojin, who has been deliberately dawdling, knew that the final opportunity to make a move has come. The first chapter. As long as this old man obtains the Eye of Samsara, the scales of victory will once again tilt towards this old man's side. This is the last chance, the only chance. Seeing Hyojin's figure getting closer and closer, Danzo roared hysterically in his heart. When faced with the choice between Eye of Reincarnation and life, he, who was driven by greed and anger, chose the former. He chose the Eye of Reincarnation that could only be obtained after 1 or 2 breaths. Huff! At the same time, Danzo gathered all the chakra in his body and launched all the ninjutsu he could at Hyojin at the same time. In an instant, boundless trees, blood-red crystals, dazzling lightning, pungent acid fog, and so on, all rushed towards Hyojin. All these were not to kill Hyojin, but to stop Hyojin for 1 or 2 breaths. Boom! With a loud noise, it was as if the frozen time was pushed forward. Trees, crystals, lightning, acid fog, and so on were instantly disintegrated in front of the truth-seeking balls, as if they were illusions, and could not stop Hyojin at all. You? A moment ago, Danzo's face was filled with madness, but in the next second, all the expressions on his face froze, and he subconsciously cried out in surprise. Just as the word "you" came out of his mouth, and the next word was still in his throat, he suddenly felt his vision darken, and his eyes were dug out from his eye sockets. No! Danzo let out a roar full of despair from his chest. At this time, even he himself could not figure out whether this roar of despair came from the Manjikyu Sharingan being dug out, or from the Rinnegan again, quickly removing the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan from Danzo's eye sockets. Hyojin used Rain Pull to hold the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in the air, and with a backhand wave, he used the truth-seeking ball to cut off Danzo's arm that was holding the fire clone, and then used Rain Pull to suck the fire clone to his side. After a little distance, Hyojin didn't care about Danzo, who was kneeling on the ground, but calmly put the fire clone on the ground, and then took out a small nutrition tank from the ninja bag on his waist and put the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in it. Through the small nutrition tank, Hyojin observed for a while. Perhaps because the evolution was interrupted again, this pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, which has the characteristics of the Rinnegan, not only returned to the appearance of an ordinary Sharingan, but also looked a little withered, completely losing the previous eerie feeling. Immediately afterward, Hyojin observed the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in the eye sockets of the fire clone, and found that the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan had also lost its luster due to absorbing too much of the pupillary power. After this torment, it seems that it will take some time for these 2 pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to recover.